And we are live. Hello everyone. Today we're going to be responding to a stream from Rollo Tomassi on his new book about religion. Today I'm joined by Structured Thoughts. Say hello, Structured Thoughts.
Hello, I'm Structured Thoughts, or ST for short.
Yeah, and I'm joined by Settlers Lament.
Yo, hey guys, how's it going? It's the one and only world-famous Settlers Lament here.
Yeah. So, I kind of wanted to start it a little bit earlier than usual with the streaming, because one of the things that will happen sometimes with OBS is that when I try and share a screen from Chrome, or from Brave, which is what I use, it'll crash. And if it crashes, don't leave the stream, because what will happen usually is that OBS will crash, I can reboot it fairly quickly, and like 20 to 30 seconds later, it'll come on and everything will work. So I just wanted to sort of get that out of the way. It's really annoying that this happens, but it's life, right? So I'm going to try and bring across the window in a second. I just have to find it. There we go, Brave. Okay, and yeah, okay. Okay, so I'm going to show it across now. And it doesn't appear to have crashed. Hooray. Right, so let's begin by chatting about a few things that we wanted to chat about first. So first of all, I just wanted to let the guys know here that if you're somebody who has kids around, or something like that, they're going to get scandalized by this, because he swears quite a lot and he's very coarse in his language. Not more than an average person, like out in the street. But you know, I know how people can be, and I wouldn't want my kid listening to this. So if you have kids, get them out the room, or tune out if you can't. That's one of the things I wanted to say, and also I understand that ST wanted to say a few things before we actually start listening to what he says, because for the first 40 minutes, he does some interesting stuff. He talks about publishing his book, and frankly, as somebody who's considered writing a book for quite a while, it's been, it's pretty interesting advice, and thanks for the insights, right? But I understand that ST has stuff to say, so if you want to sort of go ahead, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah. ST, I run a very, very small channel on YouTube. You might consider checking me out after the stream is done. And I am a former something along the lines of New Age or Hermetic thought, and something I find really interesting with Rollo Tomassi, but a lot of, let's say, modern people are getting back into spirituality, is that they fall very, very closely to old heresies. So I'm a Catholic now. And the one that I'm thinking about with him is Gnosticism. And I've written down some fundamentals of Gnosticism, right. And I think we'll find them all.
I think we should probably qualify what heresy means, because I have a suspicion that Rollo's going to end up watching this. And from what I understand from the video, he's not as clear on some of the terminology as perhaps I'd like. Right? So heresy essentially means error. So he thinks he's perpetuating erroneous views of the world that were held in the past. Would you say that was a fair representation, Steve?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like it's a wrong Christianity. A heresy is always kind of like it pretends to be Christianity, but it teaches actually something different at its core.
Okay, so go ahead.
So the first thing that Gnosticism is about is always the gnosis, the occult knowledge, which you always get by the means of a master, a teacher, or a sage. And the general idea behind it is that there's something evil that is kind of controlling the world. This is usually called the demiurge. Often the demiurge is kind of the control of all of physical reality and is the enemy of all humanity. And you transcend it by means of gnosis. The movie where the name The Red Pill comes from, The Matrix, also has this. That the robots are kind of the demiurge, and then they take the red pill, and this is kind of the gnosis by which they transcend the world of illusion and leave it behind, and now they are in the outer world. And this gnosis also gives you the true meaning of the Bible, which leads to the fact that in Gnostic cults they always kind of start saying, "Oh, this teaching of the church we don't need to follow. That teaching of the church we don't need to follow," because they already know. Okay, sure. Yeah.
I think that it's fair to say that Rollo doesn't fit into the traditional definition of a Gnostic. Would you agree with that?
I think we can point out where he kind of gets close to there and gets away from there again.
Yeah. I just wanted to make it clear, because I'm sure he'll be like, "Oh, they're labeling me or something," if he's watching this. Or any of his followers are, because I don't want to get like too heavy on that kind of thing. Because if you're accusing somebody, if it seems as if you're being accused, you just switch the brain off and right. I think there's a lot of stuff here, that's correct, but it needs to be redirected because there's some pretty serious mistakes. I think it'd be fair to say, right?
Yeah. And I think...
on your point, Elliot, obviously this guy wasn't reading the Gospel of Thomas and thought, wow, this is my worldview. ST here is just saying that he's repeating some of the mistakes that Gnostics
I know. I understand that myself. I just want to make it, explicitly clear.
Yeah. To use some maybe proper language, he's a type of Gnostic. He isn't a full-fledged Gnostic, but he is a type of Gnostic. And he, of course, is also something else. He's a fully rational human being who makes up his own mind. So I'm not saying he's part of some heresy. But the idea behind it is always that they get this true meaning, and then from that true meaning, they often forego certain aspects of church teaching, because of course once you have the true meaning, all the other things that the church teaches that don't follow out of your let's say interpretation of scripture have to be false. And with that, Gnostic heresies often turn out kind of weird. I think just these general structures of demiurge controls reality, you transcend it by means of knowledge, and then this knowledge gives you the true meaning, which you then pass on to the others. I think is everything we kind of need to maybe give the whole thing a bit of a framework.
Yeah.
What Rollo is thinking about.
Yeah, I noticed when I was flicking through, I think it was the preview to the book on Amazon, I noticed that he likened, I think the word he used was, or the phrase he used was, the feminine principle to some sort of Holy Spirit that's in the new church, or that's in the church of, I suppose he'd call it the church of gynocentrism, in some sense. I don't think that this really works, besides with maybe a really, lowbrow kind of Protestant, low Protestant attitude, right? Kind of maybe a charismatic attitude, right? Because obviously it doesn't make sense for something like the feminine principle to be a person of the Trinity, right? But this is just something that kind of popped into my head, right? So, was there anything else you wanted to say before we started? Because he immediately, where I put it on the recording, or on the YouTube, he starts immediately going into things, okay?
Yeah, he just goes off. No, I think I've provided everything I wanted at the start. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready.
Yes, hit me with the Rollo.
Okay, let's play some Rollo.
Term.
Can you guys hear it? I know you guys heard it before we went live, but I just want to make sure if it's loud enough.
But in the
I can hear
clinical
you.
term, I tried to cover my bases. Now, it is written from a Western Christian understanding. That's where I come from. Sorry, but I also did my homework with respect to other religions. Certainly with Islam, certainly with Judaism, Abrahamic religions. That's easy because that's what we know. That's what we're sort of conditioned for. And then I cover a little bit Hinduism, Baha'i faith is a little bit in there. I get into a little bit of Buddhism. Just a touch here, a smattering here. There's you'll find quotes and stuff like that in there that I use to sort of back up certain concepts. So the first part and the main theme, I should say,
Can we stop already?
Oh yeah, sure.
Like the first thing that I immediately notice is like how syncretic he is in his thinking. It's not like, I'm writing a book for Christianity because I'm a Christian and this is easy to me. He goes, I have a little bit of Jain faith, a little bit of Buddhism, because like the thought behind it, I think, is because at its core, all religions are the same.
Well, I think that I'm not sure he would go that far, but I think, and he mentions this later on when he talks about evolution and the natural laws manifest in, say, the Old Testament, right? I think that he's trying to get like a kind of an evolutionary intersection point of all of them, so he can sort of ascertain, I suppose, what we would call a kind of a weird hodgepodge of a natural law, but without any kind of, like, maybe, I mean, I'll elaborate later on about some of the flaws in his religious thinking, but like without any sort of censoring. Like he just sort of takes them in and mixes them up, like you say, like a certain syncretism, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is that, and I think I mentioned this on this show, is right now it's my belief, my thought, my opinion, my observation that we are living now in a new age of enlightenment.
Oh boy. Yeah. I think Rollo's about to get red pilled. But we'll let him elaborate, because he proceeds to talk about like distribution methods of information, but this isn't actually the case. In fact, it's very much the opposite.
And I'm not saying, let's all, it's the harmonic convergence. Let's all go run around naked and, at Burning Man. That's not what I mean. What I mean.
Yeah, I'm glad he kind of dodged the Omega point kind of thing, because,
Yeah, otherwise we would have had to have played This is the Dawning of the Age of Aquarius here.
Oh, no.
Just to kind of roast him.
I mean, like he's not like going full, like, Teilhard de Chardin on this.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the references to evolution later on could, make someone think that, but he's obviously not employing that in that sense. Thank God.
Yeah.
Is that we have entered an age, and I think yesterday's events sort of confirmed a lot of this.
By the way, he's referring to the storming of the Capitol Hill building, because it was on the 7th of January, and of course, the storming was on the 6th. So, yeah.
We've entered an age right now of information, and really kind of like the data age. We really did it, I think, more towards like the millennium, like 2000 on up. And so a lot of the concepts that I talk about in on this show and in my blog and in my books, the idea of the red pill, the idea of the manosphere, the idea of having a better understanding of intersexual dynamics via sociology, evolutionary psychology, evo-bio. It's a multi-field study, a multi-field praxeology, and I talk about that in the book. I explain what a praxeology is and what an idea.
Okay, so one thing I would like to add, just as a recommendation, try reading stuff that was written before Darwin. Seriously. Because a lot of the criticisms I have here come from stuff that was written earlier than Darwin, because the evolutionary biologists and evolutionary psychologists can't take a full account of the world, right? We'll explore this later on. But if we were to read, say, Aristotle on the virtues, or St. Thomas Aquinas, or, all manner of different philosophers and scientists who came before these people, you could come up with a more all-embracing explanation for this. But, we'll elaborate on this as things go forward.
Ideology is, and why the red pill, as far as I'm concerned, is not an ideology. It is a praxeology. It is a loose science. And
I agree. We're both. This is something that me and Rollo have in common. We're both focused more on the practical sides of things, than we are on the theoretical, right? Like, I'm not somebody who will really study theoretical things just for their own sake. I'm somebody who's like, right, okay, I've learnt this. How does this apply to the real world, right? Jesus has risen. How do I apply this in my own life? Etc. Right? Like, we have this in common, so I think we can. It's a lot more than maybe more pie in the sky things.
I don't know. I don't know like where the line between ideology and praxology is, because this also kind of seems to me like people making these kind of stops to, let's say, not take the responsibility they ought to take. So it's kind of like a person who sells you like basically an ideology and then goes, but it's all up to you guys, it's I'm not your guru or something.
Well, I mean, what he says later on is it's like, okay, so it's subject to change, right? But, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much all ideas, and I include science in this, by the way, they all proceed from first principles, right? You cannot do a scientific experiment without knowing that the universe itself is intelligible, for example, right? If you think that the universe isn't intelligible, then what would be the point in testing your senses on the universe?
Sure.
You'd just be like, well, there's no means of discerning truth, right? So I think maybe he's trying to distance himself from ideology, because ideology has very evidently failed over the last 200 years to describe any aspect of life beyond the Führer, or or to use maybe the Premier, or whatever it is in Russian, right?
Yeah.
Ideology has failed, so we're just left with practical things. I don't think that this is a good dichotomy to make. I don't believe in ideology, but I also don't think that praxology can really be divorced from... For those who don't know what praxology means, it's like practical manifestations of, underlying philosophy, right? I don't believe that you can really have a praxology without, making some first assumptions, right?
Would ethics just be a good translation to praxology?
Yeah. That's why I really like. I'm really interested in moral philosophy for this reason, moral theology, because it is the manifestation of speculative ideas. Well, speculative ideas and very grounded ideas that we can, ascertain from reason and from faith. Like them actually applied, right? That's why I really like it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what my channel largely is. It's like, right, we know these things about reality. Let's start acting on them. And how do we do this? Okay.
Written in ink. It's written in pencil. So we can erase things as we get better information. Now, is all that information accurate in the new order, right? In the new information age? No, not always. But we have access to information that no other generations, I should say, has had access to, and as easily accessible as we do now.
I completely disagree with this, because the thing you will notice with the highest levels of the academy, and indeed online as well, is that there's a language limitation. So you can read a lot of stuff in English. You can go and read tons of stuff in English, but nobody's learning the classical languages anymore, so everyone's forgetting them. Right? Now, there's this very stupid myth that goes around that Latin is somehow useless. It isn't. There is a huge amount of interesting ideas there that, red pill, right? A huge number. Famous economist, Schumpeter, he got a lot of his ideas from translating medieval tracts from Latin. I think it may have been the Salamancan school, right? There is a great deal of information that people simply cannot access anymore because the education system is abysmal, and they are distracted by other things. Kind of apropos to this, but not directly refuting him, I would say that although there is in a metric sense, more gigabytes of information, a higher proportion of that is crud. So, people are interested in, sorting through the crud, when they could be looking at the diamonds, but they don't know that because they've just been consuming crud.
Yeah. Something I noticed, because my channel is, of course, kind of trying to make up my own mind and also to try to create my Weltanschauung, my worldview from the ground up, is it is really hard to kind of find connected fields. And I think this was much easier for, let's say, if you're in the medieval world, you kind of know all the schools and where they are, where they've gone to, because there's something you can you can kind of pick a glance where like all the schools of thought are, because there's just a handful of them. Nowadays, so for example, I thought I had Catholic thought down because I was getting very good as like second Temple era kind of historic stuff and that kind of jazz, and then I joined a Catholic server with Elliot, and it's just like broke into me, and so many concepts I had seen here were repurposed there and other name and so on and so forth.
You see now
So
why
the
I
kind
added
of
you to that server.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is that there's very like the connections have kind of gone lost. So something that might be the same principle is getting repeated over and over and over again in 300 different names, because like school A hasn't figured it out yet, and school B hasn't figured it out yet, and school C hasn't figured it out yet. Instead of being like a situation where there's some kind of oversight, where it's like there's, let's say, a limited, even if it's not approachable for a single person, there's still like a limited range of frontiers that people are thinking about. Now everybody's just thinking about his own kind of thing. And so I think, yeah, there very much is this kind of diluting effect where technically we have a lot more quantity, but the quality is just going down.
Yeah, I mean, like, you notice a lot of people coming out with ideas, and frankly, like, a lot of them are just really similar, but they have the same, like, catastrophic errors in them. Right? Like, as we will see manifest in this. And this isn't Rollo's fault, right? Like, it's merely just a matter of not reading broad enough. And it's really, really easy to do. Academics get dragged into this all the time, in every era, right? Now, granted, less so, say, in the year 1300 than now, but still, right? Like, one of the greatest things that I think God has given me is like a certain skill in history, where I can go through and go, okay, so this idea this person connects to this person, person connects to this person, right? So I can say, like, give a very simple one, like Immanuel Kant connects to Hegel, connects to Marx, connects to Foucault, right? That's one, right? Like, being able to trace intellectual history and trace the ideas throughout time and seeing how they manifest,
Yes.
It not only gives you the context of where these ideas are developing from, so you don't have to learn them over and over again, it also will give you an idea of the advantages and disadvantages of them, right?
Exactly.
And the one philosopher that said that all good philosophy, or rather all philosophy, is a footnote to Plato, he was completely right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Including Aristotle himself. Okay, so let's continue.
This book, actually really all my books, but this book would have been impossible to write in any other age prior to, say, year 2000. Or
Okay,
I completely disagree. Like, I've read Rollo Tomassi's the first volume, right? And I read part of Preventative Medicine. I think that if he'd had access to a university library, he could have done so very easily. He references behaviorism in the first one. He references Watson, who was writing at the beginning of the 20th century. He could have gone through maybe Freud to some extent. You could have gotten, like, and I think this goes for, like, not just this guy, but for all of these sorts of self-improvement guys, like, Alexander Cortez. What's the guy that wrote Guerrilla Mindset called again?
I don't know.
Come on, Settler, you know. Come on, Settler. Guy that wrote Guerrilla Mindset, what's his name?
Guerrilla Mindset.
What's his name?
Can't remember.
Cernovich, that's it.
Yeah.
Right. They could have just reproduced information out of the Book of Proverbs. Like, a lot of their stuff could have just been ripped straight out of Proverbs or the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. Right? Like, Sirach itself, I've often said this, right? Like, the people on Twitter who do the self-improvement stuff, aside from the very specific exercising advice and things like that, 99% of what they say can be ripped out of Proverbs, and usually is exceeded by it.
Something I want to note on Rollo here is that he just said that kind of he doesn't want to say we have to dance in the field, stuff like that, so he kind of tries to separate himself from the New Age movement. But this, like, what he's claiming, that we are now in an age where there's, like, more information available to us than in any kind of period in history before through the internet. is actually what the dawning of the Age of Aquarius means in astrology, because the Age of Aquarius in astrology spells out or specifies around connection and more ability to connect between people. So he kind of says, we're entering a new age. Then he kind of tries to disconnect himself from the New Age movement, and then he more or less in a different way says this is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius, which I just find very funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
When we had access to online information and studies and experiment, whether it's
I mean, they've been releasing journals for hundreds of years. It's just a matter of having access to them. Like, you couldn't, of course, like, I suspect Rollo would concede, yeah, I could have gone to a university and done this. It makes things more difficult. But even then, like, you could have just extracted most of this information straight from the Bible. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Right? Like, having, like, I'm somebody who's about a third of the way through a graduate degree, and I'm about to start a PhD. Like, with any luck, I'll get into a PhD program for computer science as well. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I've read a lot of technical stuff. I've also read a lot of the Bible, and I've read a lot of the patristics and all that. That's what my channel's about, right? I can tell you for a fact, most of the social stuff that you see can be ripped straight out of the Bible.
Yeah. But the next two
I
words
mean, it really shows the degenerated state of modern man, because he is right that there's better access to this stuff now than there used to be. But most people just use this access for porn and video games.
Yeah, they do, yeah. But I think it's just knowing what to access. I was reading a tweet from somebody the other day, and it said, like, it took me decades to realize this, but really all all moral error doesn't begin in the mind. It doesn't begin with a lack of information, but it begins in the will. Right? So, like if you have a faulty will, you'll want the wrong things. Right? And so, like, from there, like, you have to change the will and not the intellect, right? Now, that's obviously the root of moral errors, but, of course, intellectual errors come from elsewhere. And this needs to be manifest through telling people what to read, as well as how to behave. That's why when I'm dealing with, atheistic people, I say they should stop masturbating first before we have philosophical arguments. Because, like, I mean, we'll get into this a bit later on. I completely forgot to grab my notes, but, I had, like, this huge list of notes about the consequences of that particular sin and that particular behaviour generally, but, I'll worry about it when we get to it.
Psychology, or whether it's sociology, or whatever else, or religion for that matter, and seeing we would not have been able to track trends as well as we do now.
That is true.
If you go and you look at sites like Pornhub's blog, and I don't mean Pornhub itself, but I mean the blog where they keep the stats. I can remember a book, I think it was called, was A Billion Wicked Thoughts by Og.
I mean, in fairness, right, we did have access to priests in the confessionals who wrote gigantic moral treatises. So, maybe not in the same, like, concrete way that we can apply machine learning to, but still, we had a means of determining that.
And Ogbas or something like that. I can't remember the name of the researchers, but that was the one really, when I read that, I'm like, wow, we have access to this kind of data that we've never had before. And it was really the sexual habits of, Americans at the time, I guess, Western people. And we have even more now. And that was, I think I read that in 2005 or something like that, 2006, somewhere around there. And maybe they've updated the book. It's a great book. It's called A Billion Wicked Thoughts. If you have, that would be on my book list, by the way. People keep asking me about book lists. Like, what do you suggest? That would.
Oh yeah, I've just remembered that he's like, we could probably speed up his talking because he's pretty discernible at faster speed. And there's like two.
Okay.
There's like 3 hours, just under 3 hours to go through.
Yeah.
Remember, it's probably a little dated right now, which is weird to say because it was like back in 2005. But that stuff was really it wasn't so much the data itself. It was like the access to it. Like, we've never had anything like this. And you've got companies like Pornhub or whatever the hubs are, and they're collecting data on our behaviors: sexual, purchasing, political, religious.
You can also find it in St. Alphonsus Liguori's moral theology that was written in the 18th century.
Yeah, I think the problem also is a big problem with data is kind of the fallacy of availability of data. So you kind of, you clutter up your thinking about intersexual relationships with, let's say, the the extremes of lust that you find on the stats of internet porn sites, and then using that kind of almost inevitably skews up your thinking about what humans really are, like what humans really need in a sexual sense.
I mean, a lot of it's irrelevant anyway. It's like, okay, so you now know what fetish people have.
Yes.
Yeah, like great, like, completely useless almost completely useless qualitative information. What you need to be asking yourself is, what are the effects that are having? Is it beneficial? And if it isn't, how are we going to get out of this problem? Which has been around since, well, the writing of the Pentateuch, right? Moses writing it around 1400 BC. So, like, what have we qualitatively gained in terms of the knowledge we're actually extracting? That, like, knowledge isn't necessarily data. They are not the same thing. Now we can, of course.
Yeah, I mean, what we've gained is way more souls getting sent straight to hell.
Yeah.
Like at least 100 years ago, we didn't have like 70% of men. That's probably a conservative estimate.
It's 90
with pornography masturbations.
It's 90
with pornography addictions.
Yeah, it's 90%.
Yeah.
It's and that's like 80% of women. So it's like, woo lad, this is like, we'll explain why this is almost civilization ending.
Yeah, if we get to it, yeah, sure.
Yeah, if we get to it, yeah.
You name it, and the data set is probably there, and we've never had that. And average Joes like me can just go and say, okay, I want to find out if this is true, or are there any...
Well, I mean, it's not quite that straightforward. Now, this is like a technical point, because the specification of my master's is in computational intelligence, and I did a lot of that for my bachelor's, including one specifically on data trimming and binning and things like that. Right? It really isn't that straightforward. You have to learn data processing techniques very, very strongly. Like 90% of the machine learning stuff isn't even algorithms, which is why I'm going into more evolutionary computing side. Right? Most of it is just trimming data, and that is really, really, really boring. So you're gonna need like a huge amount of motivation to learn anything if that method, right? Or like a decent paycheck.
Okay. Experiments on arousal versus attraction. I can go find that data if I want to. In any other era prior to now, I had to have a real keen interest in one thing, and I had to go to the library to find studies or whatever, microfiche to figure out what.
Can you pause that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is just another example of how useless this information is. Like, if you were a peasant 500 years ago, you don't need data about arousal and attraction. You just need like your family or your priest or something to set you up with your arranged marriage wife. Like, if we weren't in such a degenerated society, we wouldn't need people writing about this cringe stuff.
I don't know about that. I think that back then they still wrote stuff to attract women. I mean, I don't know,
but most people weren't dealing with that type of stuff.
Well, I think that most people were, and this is something that a lot of the PUAs actually point out. A lot of them were in situations where there was like a limited amount of men and a limited amount of women, right?
I think we get to that.
Yeah. Like
he makes the point.
Like he would say like, sexual marketplace was limited back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I've heard like PUA stuff before.
Yeah, SMV,
like junk food.
SMV values.
Our appetites have been messed up by modern overabundance and stuff.
Yeah.
What the data was, or what the news articles were, just so that I had something to back it up. And you had to be really, really invested. Now it's like it's easy to find that, and that has advantages and disadvantages. Yes, there's fake news, of course, but then you look at things where it's like we look at the data. We can now look at histories. We can now look at data. We can now look at things, and it's kind of a shame because I still think we live in the TLDR generation. So as people just want the little
precisely because of the computers, they reduce attention spans, man.
And the bite-size info bites to so what are you talking about? What's this really about? It's 400 pages. Screw that. Just tell me what the TLDR is. Well, sometimes in some topics, if you want to change your life, it's not TLDR. It's an investment. You want to learn martial arts? There's no TLDR for martial arts. You want to get
there is. It's a gun.
Big. You want to put on muscle? You got to go in and do it every day. There's no TLDR for working out. There's no TLDR for a lot of things. Mastery still, in most cases, requires you to invest something in it. And so even with the ease of information, the data that we have today, you still have to invest yourself into it. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that, because the main theme of the book is that we live in this data age, and that comes with some really great benefits, and it comes with some really bad things too. And I compare this to the Age of Enlightenment that came in Europe after the Gutenberg Press,
where everybody listened to David Hume. Okay. Sorry, that was just me.
I think the one major flaw, of course, with him, and more so the people he will reference later for his kind of influence, is that they think that the Enlightenment was a good thing.
Yeah,
Like, that's
no. Like I can understand why they'd think the scientific revolution might have been a good thing. Although even then, the theorems that were extracted had some very, very serious philosophical problems that people like Edward Fazer, Dr. Robert Koons, and Alexander Pruss have pointed out in their papers. Right, namely the fact that they simply can't take account for quantum things. And to take account of quantum things, we actually have to go back to Aristotle, which is the person they rejected in the 16th century, and the late 16th century, and then the 17th century. But the main thing that the Enlightenment generated was a bunch of very awful philosophy, like philosophers who will deny that everything has a reason for being.
Maybe we should do a stream about that in the future or something like that, because there's actually some interesting, let's say, background behind that, how this Enlightenment philosophy kind of grows out completely out of alchemical understanding of the world, where everything you find in heaven, you find on earth, and therefore all their philosophy just becomes, physics and derivative fields.
Well, yeah, of course. You get Well, I wouldn't say Marsilio Ficino obviously wasn't responsible for this, but it's kind of that sort of weird Platonic thinking on steroids. Like you see it manifest in the first meditations on meditations on first philosophy, rather, by Descartes. Right, like he makes the mistake of making the forms and the concrete things, or matter. He makes the mistake of making them distinct substances. But this is all very ethereal until you realise that it has cataclysmic consequences for the world, as we've seen. You wouldn't have the ideological wars of the 20th century without the likes of Immanuel Kant. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that he's personally culpable, but it's the result of his thinking. You wouldn't have Hegel from that, and then from there you wouldn't have the young Hegelians, and then from there you wouldn't have fascism, you wouldn't have communism, right? It's just another lesson about, like, not doing stupid things like rejecting the existence of causality.
Was invented and spread through Europe. And as a result of that, people had access to more information. Now, granted, the first thing they did was they printed the Bible in different languages so anyone could read it. Like the layman could read the Bible.
And they got it wrong a number of times.
And I mean, this is just a meme. Like, it's not like some peasant was reading the Bible. Most people were still illiterate then. But even sorry,
I mean, the middle classes certainly were, and they were the people that mattered.
Yeah. That's exactly my point. Is that it's not like the peasants were reading the Bible and were like, this is the true doctrine. It was like a relatively small clique of reformers that came up with what the new doctrines would be. This wasn't like democratic.
Yeah.
Not that ideology ever can be democratic, but that's just like the Enlightenment, Protestant Reformation meme of how this comes about.
I'm sorry, but more brains isn't better. Like, it just doesn't work like that. It's not like you can add brains together. It's like you have crowds where crowds go at the speed of their slowest member, and then you expect it to be different for brains. Like, I don't know why people would do that, but no, like, if you had a group of like highly intelligent, highly competent people in a place studying, then that's something different. But when you've just got every like Tom, Dick, and Harry reading whatever, right, you're gonna end up with some really interesting and very silly conclusions, as we can see manifest in the history of the Reformation and the history of the Enlightenment.
And as a result of that, they started the Protestant Reformation, ergo the thumbnail of today's thumbnail, because that started wars. I mean, it started.
By the way, for references, a thumbnail is a picture of Martin Luther hammering his book to the door of the Wittenberg Chapel.
Differences in beliefs. It started technically a new religion, which was Protestantism, whatever you want to call it. So it was the Catholics versus Protestants. I mean, which some of those wars lasted up to the 20th century, right? Ireland versus whatever, you know.
I don't think that was a primarily religious conflict by that point. That was definitely nationalistic. I mean, it may have been split along religious lines, but that was because the Presbyterians in the north were Scottish and Anglo, and also kind of had like nasty economic relationships with the Irish there. It wasn't really as religious as we can see now from the IRA. You know, the IRA after like 1920 ceased to really be Catholic and became socialist.
Mm.
So a lot of that is.
But this is more of a actually point. There's so much to go through. We've been going for like 40 minutes, and it's like we've got like 7 minutes in. Man,
Exactly.
There's
This
so
going
much
to be a
juicy
10
stuff here. There's so much juicy stuff here as well.
10-part series.
Here is why Rollo should read the Bible more. And he should. He should.
And we still have the legacy of that today, but what we don't realize, and you'll read this in the very first section of the book, is I make comparisons to that age of enlightenment to today. And just because we call it the age of enlightenment doesn't necessarily mean it's like, oh, it's a golden age and it's the Renaissance and we're going to all live better lives as a result. No,
Stop.
we're all going to...
Based?
The last one wasn't either.
Well, yeah. Yeah, the Renaissance was an incredibly rough time to live.
This is the age in which genocide starts appearing on the world stage. The first genocides start with the Enlightenment people, and they have been staying ever since.
In fairness, the pagans did a lot of genocides as well, like Mithridates against the Romans. It was like a return, maybe is the best way of putting it.
Information, and that's what the internet has really done, and social media has done. It has never been easier to propagate propaganda.
Also, before anybody goes, but Charlemagne and the Saxons, like, yeah, they had a nasty war and it was brutal and civilians were killed, but it wasn't a genocide. They converted a lot of them.
Than today through social media. The people who are in control of this very show, and my Twitter account, and my Facebook account, and any other place that I'm platformed by, are part of that new enlightenment. They're part of the people who are controlling the access to information.
Well, I don't know about you. I'm not part of the new enlightenment. Are you guys?
No.
I can hear Settler laughing to himself. Laughs in mold.
Yeah, I mean, no. I mean, I don't think he's referring to like rando-based Catholics, anti-trans.
No, I don't think he is either. But since my channel has intersection with the manosphere, which is why I'm responding to him, really, I suppose it might count me.
They are. I read a book. I can't remember the name of the author who wrote it, but it's the Rise of Neo-Feudalism. And the people who are the new clerisy, which used to be the clergy, but the clerisy today are the people who are controlling access to information. So it used to be that it was the major news networks. And now, in the information age, we don't need them anymore. We can see what happened at the Capitol building yesterday in real time, because people are there doing live streams.
I think we do need to still acknowledge them, and I think we've had this borne out over the last 20 days. But yeah.
People are there running, Periscope streams or whatever it is they're doing. They're recording with their phones and putting it online for everyone to see live in real time. And I did this yesterday too. It was kind of funny because I was watching all this happen, and then I go down and get something to eat, and then the news is on. I look at the news, and it's like a whole whole different world. It's like I just saw this. This is bullshit. All the stuff that's on the news right now is just horseshit. I just saw what happened. I just saw this 5 minutes ago, and I see the spin, and I see it's like that old spin. It's like,
yeah, and the trouble is, Rollo, is that you've got 21,500 views on this. I'm probably going to get like around 1,000 views on this. What do the media networks get? Millions upon millions.
Yeah.
Right, like maybe in 100 years you might have a point, but right now, no.
It's like this 20th century old order way of thinking or way of disseminate.
Now, he goes on about this old order, new order thing, and well, frankly, we'll let him get into it. I agree with him, but I think that he's actually more in line with the old order.
Information. It's still active. It's still there. It's on Fox News. It's on CNN. It's on MSNBC. It's on all of the major news channels right now, and they're still sticking to that old way of distributing that information, thinking that they're not showing their hand. They're thinking that nobody has a smartphone.
No, they don't care because they're getting 100 times, maybe like a couple of 100 times more views than you and I are getting.
Yeah.
Access to a smartphone or a high-speed internet. You go down to the library and you can see this. So when I see that, I made this sort of connection between the way we do things according to an old order way of thinking, like prior to this new enlightenment, this new data enlightenment, age of enlightenment that we're in right now, and how the means and the data and the technology, it's not just technology, because the technology is changing our way about thinking about things that we used to take for granted, like the news. This is the easiest one, and not just because it's today, but we can look at that and we go, okay, well, if they're lying to me now, what they've been lying to me about back in the 90s, back in the 80s, back in the 70s? What were that? How is this like sort of drip fed to us in sort of wag the dog fashion? And right now, I think that a lot of the people who are still entrenched in power, at least in this country anyways, people who are...
No, instead the majority of people are on YouTube watching, like, what? Yas Queen Slay? Like, they're not even watching the news. Like, at least they were watching Walter Cronkite in 1968. Now they're watching, like, transgender rap battles.
No, I mean, the news nowadays...
there's like dozens of makeup tutorial YouTube channels that are bigger than every single political YouTube channel out there.
Probably combined. Like I'm sorry, but, like, if... Like, I mean, Dr. Fauci went on Game Theory the other day. Like, to talk about the vaccine. Right, like, how much more do you need to know? The Game Theorist's got Dr. Fauci on. Right? At least in the 60s, like, granted, like, I agree, like, the media has always been disinformation, but at least people were watching, like, disinformation rather than, like, drag queen story time or whatever it's called.
I mean, the news just kind of evolved into the late night, like, version of, like, all the news people get nowadays are in the late night format, where it's kind of, you don't have the dry person talking to you, this is what happened there and there and then, but instead you have this TV funny man who kind of puts even more spin onto it.
Haha, Orange Man bad. Ha.
Yeah.
You know, like, inserts.
It's not even, like, the really disgusting thing about late night is that it doesn't even have to be pretend to be objective, because it's a humor show, quote unquote.
Well, I'm humorous. That's why I'm going to put Donald Trump's head on my comedy skit. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. I mean, Jon Stewart, actually, like, there's some precedent cases with him. Now, let's not get into that. Let's try to keep it short.
Yeah, like, we've been going for like nearly an hour, and it's like we're like 2 minutes
still in entrenched in power right now. I've been there for, I mean, look at like someone like Nancy Pelosi's 80, 81 years old. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I did a show on her on this channel. And she died on the bench, 87 years old. Why? Why are you 87? Why did you not retire at 65? Well, because there's still old order thinkers, old order people that are still clinging to what they think should be the truth of the old order, and are realizing more and more in this new age of data enlightenment, let's just say.
Like, you see, this is something that I've noticed kind of recur throughout the stream. Like, he'll think that orders can just change the truth. No.
Yeah, but the old order is, of course, his kind of pendant to the demiurge.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that his idea of the old order is basically just boomers. Like, he's getting angry at, like, 1960s people spouting philosophy from the 1890s, and he at the same time echoes a lot of that philosophy. Like he'll echo this kind of, like, subjectivity. It's like, no, we don't need that. We don't need to, like, we don't pretend that, I don't know, like, for example, right, the whole not all women are like that thing, right, that becomes the Walt, which is like a meme in like manosphere circles. I mean, it literally is not all women are like that, because they aren't, they couldn't be. It's just, like, there's 4 billion of them. Right, like, it's like...
Well, yeah, it's just like, it's the stupidest thing ever. Like, how would it be possible for all women to be the same? Like that's just...
Well, yeah, he means in the sense of, like, they seek after resources, they seek after Chad, and then like, if you don't keep them in the correct configuration, they'll divorce you, right? Like, yeah, there are a huge number of women like that. Like, yeah, I've had, like, personal experiences with women like that on more than one occasion, with pretty drastic results. Mostly because I don't particularly I've very rarely, I think I've simped to, like, one woman in my whole life. Right? Like, I'm normally way more the other side. Right? To the point where it actually, like, it works counterintuitively.
This is, I guess, something I have to kind of disagree with you guys upon.
Yeah, but I wanted to...
Because...
Yeah, but I wanted to...
I also... Oh, sorry.
Can I just say, like, you have the same sort of ideological things being repeated in the manosphere that are just not concordant with reality. It's just going to give birth to a new group of revolutionaries, assuming these guys succeed, right? They're going to give birth to another another group of revolutionaries who will react against that. Just as the boomers were reacting to an overemphasis on sexual repression in the 1960s. Because in the 1890s, the moral theologians stopped reading the Bible as much and started adopting really strange views with it, and massively overemphasized sexual morality to the detriment of everything else in a really Gnostic kind of way. They basically denied that sex was good. And, well, what would you know? Like a generation and two and a half generations later, you've got a bunch of hippies in the field taking LSD and having orgies. Who'd have guessed, right? And you don't think that the same thing won't happen? You know, like how we solve this? We solve it by going back to truth. Not like subjective opinions. Not just like subjective, I like my religion, I'll do this, like kind of thing. No, there is truth, one truth, and we follow it. Like there's no subjectivity or opinion in these sorts of things. There has to be a balance with the actual natural order in accordance with, well, God, which we will talk about later on, because some of his beliefs on God are kind of ridiculous, and I don't blame him considering he's watching debates between, frankly, like, very basic atheist evangelists and born-again Christians, but, like, you know, this needs, like, a return to truth is needed, and a return to what God actually is, and he'll go like, well, he goes later on, you know, like, I'm not interested in joining the real church, you know, it's all subjective, I can't disprove your thing of God, right? It's not like it's unfalsifiable, right? Karl Popper was wrong. We can actually reason our way back to this truth. We just have to, like, actually pursue that truth. It just needs to be done. There needs to be a disregarding of power dynamics or whatever Foucault is going on about in the academy. Right? Rant over. So you were saying, Esty.
Exactly. So similar to Eliot, I've also went through the kind of manosphere. I also own a copy of the First Rational Male, and one of the things I carried over into my Catholicism is AWOLD. All women are like that. The thing that Eliot mentioned. But just in a kind of like edited version where it's not all women are like that, but all women can be like that. In, like, let's say, in how fallen nature
that's another
works
annoying
in
thing.
human.
Yeah, that's
like when women go away from virtue, then they become caricatures of the things that the let's say the manosphere stuff describes. They become like not even like they don't even become like greedy and kind of always looking for an alpha to kind of leech off of. They become that in an even more extreme form where it's like not even funny. But it is really has to do with kind of grace and the position of grace therein. And actually something he will also mention later that maybe I want to put onto the AWOLD thing is that he says that that there's a lot of religious people say, oh, this woman is like women are closer to God than men. And this is part of Catholicism. We believe that women are naturally born into a higher state of grace. It's a like dogma or something, but many Catholics believe that women are naturally born into a higher state of grace than men.
I mean, they're certainly more in touch with... They're more in touch with a sort of intuitive spirituality, but that's just because of their disposition.
Yes. But as soon as you like lose this grace, you kind of get into the AWOLD thing. And
women go do lally, yeah, very easily.
Yeah, completely lally. And so he kind of looks at the AWOLD woman. This is kind of like his basis. And of course he's completely right in pointing out that I'm not going to say that thing, but that the AWOLD woman is just like she has less grace than the average man by far.
Oh yeah, it's very much extremes with women. Like you've got the Virgin Mary on one side, and then you've got Jezebel on the other. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, women are very easy to reprobate. That's I think one of the reasons why they had such a strong control on women's sexual morality in the past. Right? And this is repeated throughout the Bible, especially in the book of Sirach. You know, because they're a lot easier to corrupt. And you know, he knows this. He will bring up the studies of like, you know, the more sexual partners a woman has, the more likely she's to be unhappy, because she's much more easy to reprobate.
Okay,
let's go. Actually, another thing as well I want to bring up, because I don't know if we'll get to this part. He, like on this particular stream, he brings up at one point that there's a certain set of Christian men who think that that religion is a safe ticket, and I just want to say, just for the sake of like completeness, I completely agree with them. Like, believing like you've got like a safe shot in a marriage is stupid. And it's gonna be, it's so easy, I'm just gonna have like sex on tap and it'll all be nice and we'll be together forever and we'll just do whatever we want. No. The whole point of marriage is to suffer. You suffer for the sake of your partner and that redeems you.
Yeah.
People have access to information. They have more access to accurate information. They can see things happen live in real time. And they can sort of make that comparison now, and they can see that you're full of shit. Or they can see that you're really not full of shit. It depends on, what we're talking about. But when in the very beginning of the book, I have to set that out because we are dealing with old order ways of thinking, or what we think should work. And that happens with religion, that happens with politics, that happens with intersexual dynamics, definitely. And that's where I start. Obviously, it's a red pill book, but that's where things begin. And so when I talk about, I said this, I think it was on last Wednesday, maybe it was Sunday's show. When I talk about the blank slate, or I talk about social constructionism, those are old order ways of thinking that are dead. They're gone. They are completely disproven, or largely disproven. Unless I'm going to say that, like,
they were never founded on truth to begin with, and they knew that. Like, there wasn't anything there to disprove.
He's completely correct here. I think we can give him this.
They're dead. They're dead. But it's like, I just want to bring back that emphasis. No sense creating new orders. Like, just found yourself on the truth that is eternal, right? Because truth precedes everything, right? Like, we can say that the beginning of time, like there was a beginning to the universe is true, right? And therefore we can say that truth is eternal, right? Because it precedes everything else. So, like, there is an eternal truth to found on. And we should just found on that instead of playing, intergenerational revolutions. It's just asking for trouble.
I'm sorry, but you just triggered my autism. That would mean truth is perpetual. Truth is eternal means even if the universe is infinite, truth is always there with it.
Yeah, because the truth is the same as pure being, which is God.
Yeah. Okay.
Aquinas does the same thing in Summa Contra Gentiles.
Yeah.
Social constructionism actually has some merit to it, but it's not total, right? It's not something you want to build a belief set around. Or it's not something that you want to, I'm not saying social influence doesn't have anything to do with human beings. It does. But not to the point where it's turned into this sort of pseudo-religion for people right now. And so when you come up with data, when you see empirical evidence, when you try to be an empiricist, when you try to be rational about things, and you say what you think about, so...
I mean, if we were talking philosophically, I could say, well, if you're trying to be rational... this is really a well-actually point, but it's really triggering my autism, right? Like, rational and empirical are at odds with each other. But, like, I know what he means. He's like, well, you want to be, like, smart about it, right? Obviously he means that, but this is just, like, niggles the philosophy brain.
Social constructionism, or the blank slate, is utter bullshit in light of all of this new data that we have. It's like showing people who have very deep ego investments in their old order way of thinking something that completely challenges it, and it shocks them because it's like, you've been wasting your life with this. You've been wasting your life on this belief set. You've been wasting your life thinking the way that you have. You've been wasting your life on all the things that you think are achievements are bullshit because you wanted those achievements based on bad data. Or maybe it wasn't just that you didn't know about it. It could be somebody deliberately made you think a certain way, or it could be that you just wanted to think that way, or you could be just basing beliefs on your own personal experience. And now here's new data.
Now, I know that he's right in the case of social constructivism, but you have a lot of people who will go out of their way to deliberately produce an incorrect interpretation of certain data in order to warp people's views. Right, like higher criticism with the scriptures did this relentlessly throughout the 19th century.
Mm.
What are you going to do with it? You're either going to go into denial, or you're going to find some way to sort of incorporate it into the way that you live. Most people aren't doing that right now. We still cling to old order ways of thinking. And that's what the blue pill really is an old order way of thinking. So when we talk about like unplugging someone from the matrix, right?
So why don't we just call it the boomer pill?
we call it the boomer pill for our purposes.
We're gonna call it the boomer pill, and what should we call the red pill? I know I can think of something, but I think it's a bit insulting, so I'm not gonna say that one because it would just turn off the audience.
It is just keep it at the red pill. Neo, the new Neo gives him.
Yeah.
You can take the red pill, or you can take the boomer pill.
Yeah. Yeah, let's keep it as that. Why not?
Matrix like this dirty trick that's being played on us, in some aspects maybe, but in other ways, it's like we want to be in that matrix. We want to believe, in the idealism and because it's comforting, right? It's like, okay, you grow up straight and you start, go to college and you get a job and some pretty little girl will come along and you'll have 2 kids and a golden retriever and a white.
First of all, only 2 kids, only 2. and second,
picket fence and you'll retire to the villages in Florida. The end, and that's a great life. That's old order thinking. That's old order fantasizing right now.
Yeah, sorry.
He's saying 2 children because he's referencing the boomer pill.
Yeah. I know. He's talking about 2.1 children, white picket fence. Yeah. Of course. Yeah, of course.
Because
if you have any less than 8 children, you're a modernist.
Exactly.
Oh no, poor Abraham.
I think one of the reasons why we're having such a tough time here, at least in the United States politically right now, is because we are dealing with 20th century old order thinkers that are having to deal with new order data and new order ways of disseminating that data.
So basically, if we had loads of red-pilled people in power, all of a sudden things would get better. I really strongly doubt that. And I'll explain why. Because nobody has any clue of what virtue is. They just have nice information. And so they get habituated into they can't really habituate themselves to act in accordance with that information, even when it's true, and it's still largely false. So,
it's kind of the communism of social science.
Was it
where
you
the communists?
Was it you that I was talking to where there was the? No, it might have been. I might have been listening to Charlemagne, where he said, if we actually were to put like red-pilled people, like on quote, in power, you'd still have the majority of men still being bugmen, right? You'd still have it would still be the bugman Reich, right?
Yeah.
And so you'd have the same problems, and it would just devolve back into the bugman Reich in power very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So like it might not be like boomer pill, but it would still be bugman. So. I mean, pick your poison at that point.
And that's tough for a lot of people because a lot of our old order thinking is rooted in what contributes to our egos, our personalities, like ego investments. So when a guy, you want to know why guys have a real tough time separating or accepting, let's say, the red pill, becoming red pill aware about women's nature. Is because for most of their lives, old order thinkers have said, do these things, or girls will say, be nice, carry my books home, be my friend first. I need to be comfortable with you before I have sex with you.
How many men actually grew up thinking that all women were queens? Seriously.
Oh, this is common, I would say. Like this point of his, I completely agree with.
I mean, I never had that as a kid, so maybe I can't really relate to that. But yeah, I mean, obviously not all women are queens.
I certainly when these people talk about gynocentrism and stuff and how the anti-male bias that boys have to deal with and the sort of pro-female bias, that all makes sense. That all seems to sort of congrue with what it felt like to be a boy growing up. But like all women are queens seems much more extreme than anything I experienced.
Well, I mean, of course, women need more attention for a lot of reasons. I can just women survive on attention. If they don't have attention, they basically die, right? They're entirely dependent on social fabrics in the way that men simply aren't, right? Women are physically weaker. They require being protected while they're pregnant. Of course, they're going to encourage more attention. Right, like a guy can just go out into the woods and build a cabin and live perfectly fine. Right, like I don't understand why this is a problem unless for some reason. Never mind.
All the stuff that we have been talking about since the early 2000s about women's nature. Well, essentially women's nature. It wasn't so much then, but now it is. All that stuff that we were talking about then is the blue pill being plugged into the matrix. That was something that we expected was real. We thought it was genuine. We thought it was valid.
Okay, so Victorian Reactionary says, I grew up thinking all women are queens. I got into a relationship and 4 later I realised Schopenhauer was right. Yeah. I mean, I always had a kind of a cynical view of women, ever since I was like 9 or 10. But I think the chickens really came home to roost when the woman was messaging me at 5 a.m. every day for 3 weeks, and I just couldn't sleep, because it was like, blasting down the phone. It's like, get the message, I don't want to talk to you.
I think it's not so much that anybody believes like all women are queens, because I mean just growing up like you just notice the girls around you and and they're far from queens. But this idea that kind of the way, or not just that the way to a woman's heart is through like being a doormat, but that the genuine way, like the good way, it's like there's the evil way where you can get drunk at a party and just get with a chick, but then there's the good way, and the good way, of course, used to be what is basically like chivalry. And
I mean,
most people don't know what that is anymore, like in any way, shape, or form, and it just got completely flanderized into being a doormat, basically.
yeah, like that's the thing, right? Like, I think there's like a kind of a dichotomous thinking going on with a lot of red pill, unquote, men, where they think, oh, you're either like a doormat who's like, all women are queens, or you're like a player who's also like a player is only like ever so slightly above a beta, only ever so slightly, because he's still enslaved to his passions. He's still like this is the thing that I don't think most of these I think most of these red pill guys don't get. Lust is actually a thing that destroys your ability to think. It destroys your ability to be prudent. It actually makes you like have less respect for anything reasonable, right? I mean, there's like 17 particular results that Father Ripperger, who's a qualified psychologist as well as a priest, gives out. There's like destruction of prudence, destruction of counsel, hatred of God. It actually increases your weight, right? Like you might notice, like people like what was it my friend called it? Like when you go to university, I'm sure many of the people who are watching can relate to this. You see the girls and they come in at the beginning, and they're all skinny and they're all like nice dressed, right? And then over the course of the first 2 semesters or whatever, they dress more licentiously and they gain weight in a big way. And he called it what was it? The Senator Palpatine effect, right? Where they'd just gain all of these roles because they'd be eating loads and they'd be having sex loads. And it turns out it's because the appetite for sex is linked to the appetite for food, right? So, like, by indulging in sex, you're indulging in a similar thing which leads to you gaining weight, as you see very well manifested with women. Of course, there are exceptions. You have to go to the gym to counterbalance it, etc. But in other words, you're destroying your appetite. And it's akin to drinking salt water, because the more you get involved in sex, the more mad you get, the more salt water you want to drink, and so the more thirsty you get, right? That's and like this is something that affects almost everyone in society, right? Rollo actually points this out later on. Most men are thinking about women all of the time, right? And they're consenting to those thoughts. These are mortal sins in Catholicism, and of course, as you're developing the spiritual life, you will be afflicted by lustful thoughts all of the time, because that's just the nature of the spiritual life. But resisting them builds up the virtue of chastity, which builds up your self-control, which builds up your independence from lust over time.
Yes.
And I think this is the big difference between a tradcon who isn't just a beta and the red pill thinking that this guy's talking about. It's like the person who isn't a complete beta, who's involved in tradcon thinking, understands that lust will make him more reliant on not only women, but on lust generally, on pornography, on masturbation, on being enslaved to mindsets which actively destroy his ability to reason, and so therefore he avoids them outside of contexts where they aren't appropriate. However, the red pill man doesn't understand this, and so they're left where they are. They don't develop because they stunt themselves by constantly going out and getting laid. It's not a good thing. It was considered degenerate for a reason.
Do you want a super hot take?
Sure.
As soon as sex robot technology is sufficiently advanced, a player will just become an inefficient beta.
Oh no, but then at that point, like, will there even be a society left? It's disgusting.
The question is,
It's turning my stomach thinking about sex robots. It's disgusting.
Would there maybe be a class of chaste men who would separate themselves from the chaff and carry on the human race on a new level of resistance to all form of immodesty? That is kind of the point where you have to get to as soon as the robot,
they
does all the basic functions.
They seem to forget that a substantial chunk of the society was run entirely by celibate men for over 1,000 years in Europe.
Yeah.
I would say almost a majority, right? Because the dioceses the ones that we use to describe bishoprics, those were originally, jurisdictions of Roman law, right? And when the Roman Empire in the West collapsed, who handled it but the church? And these were like largely celibate men. And when they weren't celibate, they were either married in some special cases, or they were violating their disciplines. Like, there's no shame. In fact, it's a good thing to be a virgin. It is a good thing to be chaste, to have control over your sexual appetite. And because red pill men don't do that, they just darken their intellects more and more and more. Like, you were talking to me the other day about that documentary with Mystery, wasn't it?
It's not a documentary, it's a book. Yeah,
yeah, and you were describing that one of the pickup artists tried to kill himself because one of the girls couldn't get with him, right?
Yes.
This is a result of that lack of the control over the sexual appetite, because when it can't be gratified, because it is so powerful, then it will influence the emotions and drive people into those sorts of spirals. You see this constantly at university with the way that women and men behave. They reach the end of the coombe train, and they sort of bottom out, and their relationships die. And another thing that I noticed him going on about, and this is something that Rollo talks about in his first book. You have what do they call them? Like born again virgins, right? Where you have women who will go out and destroy themselves, and then they'll marry like a beta. Usually they'll describe it as, or just some guy who happens to be interested in that. And then later on, what they'll do is they'll go back to their ways, right? Now, first of all, one thing I want to be explicitly clear about: the Bible warns against this, explicitly, repeatedly. And second of all, the reason for this is because it's possible to overuse the sexual appetite to the point where you can't fulfill it. And a woman realizes this, a particular woman might realize this anyway, will stop and will get married because she seeks pleasure in other things, because obviously she can't seek pleasure in sex anymore. But eventually, over time, the appetite, grows back because because she's not indulging in that so much, right? And of course, eventually she gets something that spikes up the appetite again, because she's not taught that that's wrong, like properly wrong, and or she chooses to, right? And then she's back on the train again. She's back. Like, I don't mean that in the euphemistic sense that they tend to refer to it. She's back riding, like she's back drinking the salt water, and so of course she's going to spiral out. But this will only be the case where a woman doesn't actually sit and think about it and reason, right, okay, this is why. So not all of these quote unquote born again virgins are going to go do this. I think this is largely fear.
Empress Theodora.
Yeah. A lot of women completely reform themselves. What's her name? Saint Mary of Egypt, right? Infamous prostitute. Sleeps her way up to Jerusalem. Ends up getting to the gate of the Mother of God's church, one of the Mother of God's churches there. Can't go in because of an invisible force is stopping her. Eventually she realizes that this is God stopping her, and goes off into the desert and fasts for a very long time. And we have the account of this particular encounter by another saint called Saint Zosimus in a hagiography written soon afterwards. Well, I think it's 200 years, but this was carried on through oral tradition, of course. Right? You have this all over the place in the Desert Fathers. You have this all over the place in the Christian tradition. Mary Magdalene, but there is the other thing to consider as well. And he will say, and he says rather erroneously in this. I'm trying to compress all of this because it's a very long stream, and I don't want to spend 6 hours going through it, right? Do you understand, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Because it's 3 hours, right? You'll go, forgiveness by the born-again Christian means he has to marry her. No, it doesn't. He just forgives her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, he seems to think that forgiveness means I'm going to tie myself to you.
No, he thinks that forgiveness means you're a blank slate now. It's I'm a murderer. Can I be forgiven? Yes, but that is not your sentence. Your sentence isn't, oh, you're forgiven now. You're a better man now. Now you go out of jail. No, you can be forgiven for your murder. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to live with the consequences of it.
You guys can't see this. Actually, let me make some room. Nah, I'll just stick it on there. Right, you hear this? Right? That is the complete works of St. John of the Cross and the second volume of the Philokalia. If we just had to go to confession and confess our sins, we wouldn't need that. That's 2,000 pages worth of spiritual writing for the overcoming of sin.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
So when you, and even to this day, what I was just criticizing Pilion with Pilion. I hope that Filion, that guy that I did the show with Myron Gaines about 3 shows back, and when I was watching, him criticizing Myron's like street videos and game and all this other stuff that he was throwing out there on TikTok videos, I'm watching him and I'm going, this guy's plugged in. He's blue pill in 2021, and this isn't 1995. This isn't even 2005. This isn't even 2015. And this guy is still spouting off the same blue pill, plugged in Matrix BS that I've been hearing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see, I think that the beta guys, this is one of the things I think the beta guys have over the red pill guys, right? The red pill guys tend to reduce sex to only having children inside of marriage, or just flinging about, right? Now, the blue pill guys massively overemphasize it, but they get actually one of the most important, if not the most important aspects of sex, and that is the unitive factor between the man and the woman, right?
Yes.
Now, of course, this is disordered because they're lusting as well, but that's one of the most beautiful aspects of it, the unity of man and wife. Now, of course, being betas, this of course falls flat, particularly with the kinds of women that sometimes they'll pick, right? But that is an aspect that's still there. And the complete denial of that is just, a lot of these red pill men are cynical for a reason. Right? Because they think that, I'm not a beta anymore, therefore I have to reject one of the most important parts of sex. No, of course not. You just have to get a grip, control yourself, and be rational in the women you choose. And that's hard. Really hard. I've made mistakes myself, in that regard.
Yeah.
But it's still something you have to do, and it's still possible.
Yeah. Sex can be a holy act if it is, let's say, in proper form.
Oh yeah, sex is great. Aquinas ranks sex. Well, he ranks pleasure generally, but sex as the third highest thing below virtue itself and God. Yeah. Right? There's nothing wrong with sex. It just has to be used in the correct way.
Yes. In the early 80s even. And it just doesn't die. It just, because it's so comforting. It's an easier plan. It's easier to think of it in those terms. Remember when I talked about how it's tough to cross the abyss when you have to unplug from the matrix, and you have to, usually it's when guys are in sort of a point of trauma and they're trying to have questions and they don't understand.
This is actually a part of also the Gnostic corpus, is the way between the, let's say, the Gnostic knowledge and the outer world, the divine sphere that is outside of the world of that's outside of the world of the demiurge, is always kind of jumping over the abyss. You need extreme faith, and usually you need to listen to your master in every way, shape, or form. It's kind of the initiation ritual. If your viewers want to watch a movie that kind of outlines the initiation ritual perfectly without being in any way, shape, or form scandalous, maybe very small amount in the beginning, but there's a movie called Now You See Me. It's rather famous. The whole thing is just an occult initiation ritual, and it even says so in the movie. And the crux of it is that the 4 magicians in that movie, they need to execute a plan word for word. They need absolute faith in overcoming what Rollo calls the abyss, the thing of uncertainty, and they don't know what waits for them on the other side.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add as well is that a lot of the time, these, particularly in the Gnostic cults cases, right, and this also extended to a lot of the pagan religions, a lot of this was completely without reason, right? With specifically Christianity especially, there is tons and tons of reasons to do it. Right, there's always there's I don't think you could get more evidence than there is for anything else besides the Christian idea of God, right? There is, there's reams and reams of books and reams of arguments and reams of historical data, right? And most of these are denied largely because of modern cynicism towards miracles and because of a lack of understanding of formal logic. Right? Like, Valentinius didn't have this. Marcion, for those who don't know, these are Gnostic heretics, right? Marcion didn't have this. Marcus didn't have this. Mani didn't have this. But the Catholic Church does. In droves. Any sort of Orthodox Christian denomination has this in droves.
Understand why the girl left them, or their relational their investments in their relational equity are suddenly shattered because she took up with the hot guy in the foam cannon party, and you're left there holding the bag. But you were such a nice guy, and you will make the perfect boyfriend, and she's sure that you'll meet a nice girl at some point. But bye.
We should just stop using the word nice and start calling it pathetic.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of nice. It's like I've known plenty of nice guys who are nice, and it's like, yeah, but where's the virtue? And you're not. Like, you're lovely to the girls, right? But you don't have any reason for them to be interested in you.
And this is exactly what women want when they say want a nice guy. They want a virtuous guy.
Yeah, like it. Yeah, they don't want like a doormat. And if you actually go out there, you lift, right? Builds virtue. If you go out there and study, building virtue again, you earn money. That's an indication of virtue. An indication of certain virtues. Anyway, you go out and you're like this is why. Like women, like a lot of women are involved in charity things and will marry poor guys who are involved in charities because they make manifest kindness as a virtue, right?
Yeah.
But being a nice guy, being like someone who stares at the floor and is like all women are queens, right? No, pathetic. But likewise, being like some sort of like red pill beta kind of like quote unquote bad boy, although are really any of them bad boys? I don't think so. A bad boy, unquote, doesn't need to be told any of this, right? They're attracting a very small subset of women, right? And I know that because I used to, I realized reading Rollo's book that I did certain things that were considered game tactics without even being aware of it. Like, I used to relentlessly neg women, and that would attract a kind of woman, right? That wasn't someone I wanted. You're only attracting a certain subset of women when you're playing game tricks, and I think even what's his name, the Armenian guy who had Michael Jones on. What's his name? Roosh. Yeah, Roosh himself admits this. Roosh himself admits this. You're attracting a certain subset of women when you do this kind of game, and you don't want that kind of woman.
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, suddenly all that investment, all the things that you were told that would get you the girl, that would lead you to a happy, contented, at least sex life, if nothing else, is out the window. And so at that point, God.
Yeah, like I said, if you're expecting a contented sex life, out of a relationship, then it's not going to last because you're building on something that's highly, highly changeable, right? Foolish thing to base your relationship on.
Guys are just sort of they're challenged, and so they've got this. What they're doing is they're transitioning out of that blue pill matrix, or they're sort of cut adrift. Now, most guys will go back. They want to believe that the process works, and that's what it is. It's trust the process, and the blue pill, the matrix, is a process. Trust the process. It's better to love and lost than never to have loved at all. It's a Shakespearean thing, and
even Rollo kind of encourages even this kind of thinking in his own books, right? Because he says just plate spin, pick women who had bad boyfriends beforehand, and you'll be fine. Right? Because you're building... Yeah, it's like
the...
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so something that seems completely lost to Rollo is the kind of virtue you can build by falling in love with a singular woman. And I know what he kind of warns people about is that a lot of people nowadays, what the red pill guys call one-nighters, kind of start living fictional lives in a sense, or start living in their head when they fall in love with a woman, where we're going to be together, and this kind of what women call a creepy guy is what a red pill guy calls one-nighters, where he's like, oh, this is the woman I've fallen in love with, and now we're kind of destined for each other, and I need to have her, stuff like that. But the idea of falling in love with a woman is, and Bishop Sheen has a beautiful talk about it, but I don't know which one it is off the top of my head. But it is a transformative effect that is so incredibly strong that you will find it in every single religion encoded, described in some form, like some way, shape, or form. Like the idea of the uncivilized brute who sees the girl like bathing somewhere, and he wants to have her, and for that he kind of remodels himself into a king, is such a fundamental part of reality that everybody has picked up on that in all of society. And this is exactly the kind of male we need nowadays, and exactly the kind of male that the red pill doesn't allow you to be. Because the red pill always kind of, you say, okay, maybe I have a woman that I admire greatly, but I'm going to numb my desire for her by spinning plates, because of course that's what that does, right? Like if you're really in love with a woman, like your entire body just builds up to that, and that's just not just, I guess a red pill guy would say that's your horniness. That's like it's like you just need the release of being with that woman. No, your entire being is structured to the conquest of a woman. And the problem with one-nightists is not that you want to conquer a specific woman. It's much more that you have a kind of entitlement, and that you do not know what conquest really is. Because of course, when you try to conquer a woman, like you do things like you feign spinning plates, like you feign interest in other women, that kind of stuff. Of course, I mean, it's kind of, you play with each other. Like the whole romance thing is an art that is very advanced and can get very messy. But as soon as you, let's say, stop feigning interest for another woman and just like kind of start spinning plate, that kind of jazz, you lose your desire, you lose your appetite. And it's kind of like when you're hungry and you're really, really hungry, and you could use that hunger to like cook a really good meal and like, put everything into it because this is the one meal I'm going to get to it. Or you just kind of make a stop at McDonald's on your way home because you're just hungry, kind of that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've kind of made that mistake myself, right? Because I suppose you'd call this spinning plates, and by that point I had read Rational Male. I think I used bits of it, right? But like I had like at least two, maybe actually I suppose a third, kind of a third, but she was outside of the group. And then I met this fourth one, and she wasn't very attractive. She wasn't like a physically attractive woman, but she was like really smart, like really, really smart. And like what I did was I set aside all of the other people too quickly, and that led to one of the girls completely losing her mind. And I'll put it this way: there's a reason why there's a 3-month gap in my uploads. Yeah. So be careful how you manage that one, guys, because like I have always had the tendency of not caring about like, and I've had to force myself to start caring, right, about what the other gender things, right. But yeah, I tell you, I learned after that one. Yeah, like be careful, fellas.
So what they do is they go, well, they get drunk for a couple of weekends, and then they go back to the same behaviors and the same belief sets that they had before, because there's nobody around. There's no Rollo Tomassi. There's no red pill you to help blue pill them not go back to that.
Yeah, like this is another thing that's common with the Gnostic religions. The sage. No sage to red pill.
Exactly.
There's no Valentinius. There's no Marcion.
Yeah. And something I just want to point out, like all the Gnostic things, they have a pendant. Like Gnosticism is kind of like a bit of a parody of Christianity in a sense. So all the things, they have a pendant in Christianity. I just had to think about that when I gave the last example. Like there's this kind of like stepping into the unknown when you transcend from let's say your being as separated from the Redeemer to being in unison with God. Is you have to step into the unknown, of course, because you do not know, I don't know the quote, but nobody knows what heaven is like. These kind of things. Like all of those have pendants in Christianity, but Gnosticism always just kind of amends them, usually makes them a bit more extreme. And I think you really like realize by contrast when somebody points out, it's like, okay, where does the cult start and where does like the proper religion end, kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, like another thing you observe as well, like you have all of these Gnostic sages who walk around saying they have wisdom, whereas Jesus is wisdom. He is wisdom incarnate. right? Like not in the sense of just what is written in the scriptures, but also in the sacraments themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what they do, and they repeat the process over. And guys wonder why dudes get married like 2, 3, 4 times. Think, oh, it's going to take this time. No, they've just never had anybody at that point of trauma point out why what they were doing was failing. And again, what is the definition of insanity, right? Is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Huh. Sorry, I can't help but find that kind of ironic with the plate spinning thing. You know, because like I know. I have a very strong suspicion that a lot of the men who are invested in the red pill lifestyle are deeply miserable very quietly. I can't affirm this myself because I never really got deep into it, but this is just a suspicion. That's another result of lust as well, complete misery. Because you can't fulfill the appetite because it's so strong, and you know that's why you go out and get more women and get more plates, and you know, self-replicating cycle. Like replicating cycle, and you know the biggest problem with the lust thing is that you're dragging other people down with you when you're doing it. You're dragging down the women, and like you know, like I remember I was talking to one of the guys who runs the 2021 men's conference. The guy that runs it, what's his name? Name doesn't matter, right? And he was saying, well, she's already been with 40 guys. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you have to make it worse. That's not an excuse. That's
40 guys.
Yeah, I can't remember the context of the conversation, but I was saying having sex outside of marriage is degenerate, right? And it's like, well, what about if, I can't remember the exact context, right? But basically, it was something to do with sexual morality, and he said, well, I was saying, you're destroying the girl when you're doing this. It's like, well, she's already been destroyed by 50 other guys. It's like, yeah, does that make it better?
Oh, okay.
Does that make it better? You're just digging her deeper, you know?
Yeah.
Like you're just digging her deeper. It's gross, and it destroys her more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
And I mean, you are destroying yourself too. It's not like this only harms women.
Yeah. Very first homily of St. John Chrysostom on Hebrews, right? You know, when you commit a sin, you're sinning against yourself first. And yeah.
But you will only get what you've gotten if you keep doing what you've done. There's nobody there to pull them out of the matrix. Now there is. And now there doesn't even need to be a me or you or whoever. It doesn't need to be us. Guys can find this on their own. They can see it on live in real time, just like we did political, riots and everything else. We can see that happen live in real time.
Okay, so maybe not quite so Gnostic. Oh well.
And then we realize that what we thought was true, for a long time, the Matrix, the blue pill, whatever. And again, I'm not saying it's necessarily malicious. It can be completely indifferent. But what you thought was true turns out to be not true. It turns out to be something that you need to sort of make some kind of personal change about. And most guys, like I think it was Turd Flinging Monkey said this first. It says, you guys are waking up, and it's not us. It's not even the red pill so much anymore. That is,
it's like somebody goes to an archaeological site. They dig a hole and they find a coin, right? And it's like, wow, this is an amazing coin, and then walk away and don't dig again. Little do they know there's a treasure chest right under the coin, right? Like these guys have realized that being a beta isn't a good thing. They found their coin and they're like, oh, I can acquire women this way. And they completely leave the chest of all of this wisdom underneath it.
Yeah.
Or the manosphere. I mean, we're helping. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're doing very good work here. But even if you erased us and you took you took MGTOW away and MRAs away and the red pill away and black pill away and you take all this stuff away, guys are still going, this doesn't add up. And I see it live in real time. I saw, what was it? Dr. Dre had a stroke because he was in the middle of this really ugly divorce. Well, you see that happen. You're right there when AP Newswire Associated Press decides to drop the story, or who else is getting divorced?
This is one of the points I really don't like about him. This is just sociopathic in my opinion. It's like, oh, Dr. Dre has a stroke when he has a divorce. Ha ha ha! I guess he doesn't have the secret knowledge I'm peddling to you.
Well, I don't think he means that. I think he's laughing because it kind of illustrates his point about the mindset that goes on. Like I wouldn't want to judge what he's thinking when he's doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people laugh when they're confronted with disgusting things like that. Right.
Okay. Point taken.
Divorced. The other rap guy is getting divorced. Oh, Kanye West is getting divorced too from Kim Kardashian. God, why didn't I think of that? Kim Kardashian of all people. Oh my God. Or people go, even if you just watch
I don't like it. He takes the Lord's name in vain, but
yeah,
I'm letting this be broadcast because I think that a lot of red pill guys, because this channel originally was red pill, right? It was like one of my first videos was on Coach Red Pill's channel, there are a lot of guys coming on here, but I think that some of them from the beginning might be here, and this might help them out, right? One thing I would say is that entertainers throughout history, like I can't speak for either of these particular people involved, but they haven't been known for, you know what, never mind. I won't say that.
The Bachelor, The Bachelorette. You can see this, you go, oh my God, what the hell? Or you see, this female empowerment narrative that's everywhere. You see...
yeah, that is really annoying. Right, like the female empowerment, like you can do anything, girl, sister, and then these girls are all depressed at the same time, and they never once think, maybe there's a connection between the pride that we're being encouraged to have, the licentiousness we indulge in, and our misery. Like, sometimes it's just like, you want to shake them, it's like, it's because you're just giving yourself to any guy in a nightclub, obviously. That's not empowering, it's making you miserable, and it's destroying your ability to pair bond.
The intersectional feminism.
Oh, the amount, like, I remember once, like, I was on a night out, like, in pub, right, and I take eyes at this girl, right, and she comes up to me, and she's, like, trying it on, and, like, in maybe a more physical way than I expected, and then when she realises I'm not reacting, she looks me dead in the eye, and she says, I hate myself, right, and keeps going, right, and that was, like, the most surreal experience I've ever seen, like, she even ended up following us back home for about, I'd say about 400 meters. Yeah, but like, I mean, that's one of the extreme examples of what these women do to you, because like you can you'll hear many guys like go to bars, they'll talk to a girl and she's drunk or something, and she'll talk about how much she hates herself and how horrible her life is. It's like, yeah, you're surrounded by friends that you hate, you're living, you're living with habits that are bound to make you miserable. Yeah, of course you're miserable. What you don't need is empowerment. What you need is humility. Someone needs, like, and women hate this because they're always told, like, oh, they're, like, a lot of women hate this because they're always told, oh, you're beautiful just the way you are. No, you're not, because no one is.
Yeah.
No, like, we are all fallen.
Women kind of live in the same, not the same, but also like this kind of like fantasy world where there's the demiurge of the bad society. In this case, it's the bad masculine society. And they just need more freedom from that through various forms of, like, usually it's even also gnosis, just through the university system, kind of need your unconscious bias training, and then you kind of unlock your, let's say, next level of being, and then usually they put some weird spirituality into that. But what they need is like guidance. Like, they need the entire opposite of that. They don't need independence, they need guidance. They had no fathers in their life.
They could barely cook. Like seriously, like loads of them can barely cook, right? And they're told about all this independent stuff. Love, you order your food off of Uncle Ben's, off Uncle Joe's or whatever it's called. What's the pizza place called? Papa John's. You order your meals off Papa John's, and you don't clean the plates, and you just throw out the paper. You throw out the cardboard box, and you sit there with like a tub of SSRIs, right? You don't need to be told you're independent. You need a doctor, you need a counsellor, like a counsellor who will actually help. This is something that really frustrates me as well. Like the counsellors that they give to women are either more damaged than the women themselves, or they're completely handicapped, so they can't actually give the woman advice. It's like I mean, you got like this poor girl who's sat in front of you who's like 200 pounds and she's 5'6", right? She's crying her eyes out because no guy finds her attractive. It's like, yeah, of course,
yeah,
right? Like I mean, as hard as this, obviously you frame it in a nicer way, but like, control your gluttony, you will lose weight.
Yeah,
you don't phrase it in that way. You say something like, look, maybe you should, like, how do you encourage that? What you could do is you could say, well, you want to be more independent from men. Well, in that case, what you need to do is reduce your level of lust. And in order to do that, you need to control, your appetite, right? Because your appetite is linked to that, right? You want to be independent from men? Because a lot of these women very strongly resent men, right? You get them on like a 1 meal a day diet, right? And then that lets them drop the weight. And at the same time, you've educated them in the fact that lust is bad. And so they'll remain chaste. So they won't just immediately go out and destroy themselves the moment they've lost the weight, with any luck. Right, so, like, but of course, you can't do that nowadays because you can't dare tell anybody that they're suffering from some sort of vice because, you know.
And I think the thing with overweight women, that's kind of sad, is that the thing that they are buying into is a true thing. It's like the internal, let's say the internal world matters. You know, it's like the person, like the thing you fall in love with, the thing you can actually have a marriage with, is the internal person, not the external person. But what these women don't get told is that over time the external person starts to conform to the internal person. So, for example, I have a friend who is in a habit of putting everything. He kind of like front loads everything, not front like back loads everything. Where everything he always does at the last amount of time in like huge chunks, where like, he just like consumes one huge chunk of tasks he has to do at one time, and then he kind of goes free for a while, and then the kind of stress mounts up again. He consumes one huge chunk at a time, and he is like that in his let's say approach of time, but also in his approach of diet. So he's very overweight because he eats normally, but then he just kind of starts stuffing himself.
Well, I mean, it's another thing as well. It's another thing as well. Like I have had a problem with my weight since I was like 7 or 8, right? And I've thinned out. You know what made me thin out? And you know the reason why? It's because I was eating way too much bread. And I've gone back to that while I've been in lockdown for a number of reasons, right? And so I put the weight back on. But like all of these girls, they go out to the gym and they sit on the cardio bike for an hour. It's like, that's well and good, love, but you're going home and you're eating 70% carbohydrates in your diet, right? Like, you will lose more weight on like 40% protein, 14% carbs, 20% fat, like I used to eat, than going to the gym, right? Because it will completely reconstitute your body.
On this point, I actually want to go one point further, but not in this video, just for people to check out. If they kind of want to go along with this guy, with this, it's a tangent. Spencer Cornelia, he's also on YouTube. He made a video I absolutely adore on why diet, like all these XYZ diets, are not good for you. And basically, he also points out that the thing that makes or breaks your constitution, like whether you become fat or not, is mostly like it's not dependent on worldly affairs. It's dependent on internal affairs. So one of the examples he makes is some girl, she goes through a salad like every week, and then but she has a breakup with her boyfriend, and so on the weekend she just collapses and she just starts chewing Ben and Jerry's because that's the only thing keeping her alive. And it's a great video, I think, on dieting and why some dieting works for some people and why it doesn't for others, and kind of puts it into correct alignment with, first you have to get your, let's say, your moral, your virtues, and your spiritual life in order, and then you can then dieting works for you.
Yeah, fixing the diet will fix your lifts in the gym as well if you're a guy, right? And it will make you look more toned. Like, I gained about, and this is quite impressive as far as I understand, right? I gained I think it must have been about 15 kilos on my overhead press because I changed the way I was eating, right, in 2 months, right? But more important than that, like my pectoral, my shoulder muscles became way more defined. And even in spite of the lockdown, I still have a lot of the tonage from what I had from I had a 3-4 month period in the gym, right? I still have a lot of that tone. It's just covered with fat because I've been eating lots, right? So when you go and do barbell training, and I suspect the same is the case with the women, right? You will change your life, for the better. But this is very off topic, you know.
Yeah.
It's the year of the year of Captain Marvel, tough girl, warrior princess stuff. It's everywhere. It's cliche now. It's boring. It was boring back in the 90s. It's hella boring right now. So when you see that live in real time all the time, it doesn't take a Rollo Tomassi to unplug these guys, or at least to give them an idea that, hey, maybe things aren't the way that we think they are. It's like the Matrix, like the code in the Matrix is just sort of like crumbling away. It's a glitch in the Matrix. Guys are going to see that anyways. I'm glad to be able to help that, but that's old order thinking. And the guys who are really dependent upon that system, they fall back into it. But I think more and more, and certainly into the future from here on out, I hope guys will wake up, because people are waking up. And I don't mean that in just I mean that in the intersexual dynamic side of things, not just the religious side, not just the political side. But I think like we're going to start thinking in different ways as a result of this new enlightenment. In fact, we already are. 2016 and the election, again, American, sorry, the election of 2016 and the election, this clusterfuck of an election, are old order elections. They're old. We're relying on old order methodologies for our political system, our very democracy, right? We're relying on, we're trusting in that process that has been fundamentally changed. The same thing for religion.
Wow, based Rollo, who's gonna institute the new presidency. There's not going to be any representatives or anything. It's going to be El Presidente. You know. Yeah. Let's see what he has to say with religion.
The same thing for our understanding of intersexual dynamics.
You know, actually, I don't think we're actually going to have to change our understanding of religion. I think that a lot of men in the church are just going to have to man up, and that's about it. And a lot of women are going to have to, recall what the scripture teaches.
Woman down.
What do you mean, woman down?
Men have to man up, women have to woman down. Like,
how do you woman down?
Bit less of girl power, like.
Yeah, like just cut out the girl power stuff. No one believes it.
Maybe you can't do it. Have you ever thought about that?
I doubt the women themselves. Actually believe it. Like who do they think they're fooling? It doesn't fool the guys. It doesn't fool themselves. It doesn't fool other women.
It is part of this new thought where just believe it strong enough and it becomes reality. No, it doesn't. No, I my mother is living alone with 2 children. I'm out of the house, but 2 other children, and having a job. It's complete hell, like day to day. We all are amazed that she's alive. Like, that's how hard it is. You can't, girl. You don't go, girl.
No, just like, some girls just need to wind their neck in. Simple as. Yeah. It's like you're not all sweetness and power. Like, you have your virtues. Like, you might be blessed by being physically attractive. You might be blessed by being smart. But you certainly don't necessarily have all those things. And there is always going to be a woman out there who's better than you. And it's the same with blokes. Like, so wind your neck in. As men need to as well.
That was the first thing to go. Really. I mean, if you think about like the manosphere and seduction community back in the early 2000s, I'm not saying this was like some big, it's this, bellwether event that mystery and RSD and whatever, Project Hollywood was going to change the world. That's not what they set out to do. But because guys are guys and we want to get laid, that was the first place we started comparing notes. What are things like in Dubai? What are things like in South Africa? What are things like in China? What are things like in your country? And we'll compare notes and see what's the best way. How do women behave there?
Mm-hmm.
This is the start of his mythos of gnosis. Like, the Enlightenment starts because guys are guys, and the first thing we go to is getting laid and getting our noggin off. This is the start of like his mythos, and then all the later Enlightenment, all the what you're seeing now with the internet and new alternative versions or alternative explanations of the world arising in the internet, all of that is secondary to that. That is following the mystery revolution.
Yeah, like he talks about that, but also he mentions the Sosoir forums. Like, I went on there once and poked them with my ideas, and I don't think they didn't quite know how to react. Like, I think they were a bit discombobulated that I said, well, no, I'm not going to have sex with these women because I don't need it. Like I was like, okay, so how do I handle the situation? And they were like giving me all of these situations that involved like, rooting the girl, right? It's like, no, no, I'm not doing that. It's like, and they were like kind of like boggled a little bit. It's like they couldn't figure out why I wouldn't. But, hey ho, let's continue.
How do women behave here? Let's write lay guides for all of these countries. That was absolutely brilliant. I think Bruce hit on something back in the day when he was writing, bang this, bang that, bang Sweden, bang whatever. There's probably no better illustration than the comparing of notes between countries than those books. So there's that, and it's like this idea. And I'm not saying all old order thinking is bad. Some of it is confirmed in the new order. Some of it's confirmed by this new data, but a lot of it is blue pill, and we're waking up and we're unplugging from that. So that's when I talk about, and going forward, when I talk about old order thinking or I talk about new order thinking, people have asked me about this. I say, well, what do you
Maybe
mean by that? Well, you'll find
one other point, just for later. I just kind of want to, if we really manage to get through the stream in maybe multiple parts or something, I just want to point out that he is having fun, and he is very much condoning the act of guys exchanging their guides on how to get laid in different countries without any strings attached, because that is important for the things he laments later.
Oh, and what would those things be by any chance?
Let's see if we can get there.
How many more minutes is it? Because I'm thinking we'll go for another hour and a half or so. Okay.
Yeah.
Will we get to it? Do you think?
I think we get to it. I think the thing I've prepared for the most is the first 2 hours, and I think if we go for another hour and a half, maybe skip some of the Q&A, we should be getting there. Otherwise, I just say it near the end.
Okay.
I mean, we've gotten 20 minutes into this live stream so far. Seems
there's a lot more to go. Like, I remember the next half an hour being filled with stuff to respond to.
Yeah, but I think we can skip the Q&A. If we do that, we can shorten it down again.
Yeah, do you have, like I have some timestamps as well of stuff that would be interesting to respond to. Like,
no, but I can...
Yeah, like, I do remember, I've already got the video on a 0.25. Right, we'll go up to 0.5. Yeah, like, I just remember the next half an hour being jam-packed with stuff to respond to.
Yeah.
Like, I
can't
remember the rest. Yeah, but, like, if you got tabs, like, let me know.
Look, because that's where I go into great detail about it. But we are in a new age of enlightenment, and instead of the Gutenberg press, we have the internet now. And I think that a lot of old order politicians, old order preachers, old order ways of making money, old order ways of thinking about employment and corporate America, according to this, don't want to quote Aaron Clary, but Aaron Clary has covered this quite extensively. The way we think about work, the way we think about our work ethic, the way that we think about our religion, our gods, our women, our men, masculinity, femininity, all of that. The old order ways of thinking about those are being challenged right now with new order.
Man, have you ever read the book Gnostic America, a contemporary study into American culture based on Christianity's oldest heresy? By
No.
chance? Basically, it's everything you really like from the perspective of a Lutheran chaplain, right? And what he's saying here is basically said and is responded to by this guy at length. Like, he writes out this... he actually wrote out a creed, like a modernist creed. I might go and grab it. Is it in my bookshelf, or is it in the other room? It's in my bookshelf. Right, like, it sounds really similar to what's being described. There'll be 2 seconds. Right.
Okay. So how are you doing so far?
It's Gnostic America, a reading of contemporary American culture and religion, my mistake, according to Christianity's oldest heresy, by Peter M. Burfiend. And I actually read this with a Franciscan priest. But he writes out this really interesting kind of proto-creed for Gnostic movements, and it's like really, really interesting. I found. Let me find it. Man, like, it's a bit of a dense book to get through, and he sometimes says some stuff that's a little bit strange, but like that particular part, I think very much hit the nail on the head. Where was it?
Okay.
Yeah, let me find it. Where was it? He mentions the Lorax. I just saw that, like, flicking through the pages. My name is Lorax. I speak for the trees. I am really just I am the sage of the trees, to learn them to look at the world of tree forms. You know? I can't find it, man. I'm gonna have to look at the index. Yeah, this is a very interesting book, though. That's why I'm, like, sort of taking time to find it, because it's clear that we're not going to finish this in one stream. Creed Clement of Alexandria. Creation.
How long?
Creator.
How long do you think you'll take?
Maybe 2 or 3 parts.
No.
Man, I can't find it.
To find the thing in the book.
I have no idea. I thought it was around about the page 100, but it turns out that I'm wrong. Yeah, like, he does this really cool chapter on I think it was Saving Private Ryan and how it intersects with Gnosticism. And, like, no, seriously, like, he was like, well, they're all pursuing this kind of idea that they're going to get absorbed into, and all the people get killed along the way, including, actually, shall I spoil it? Oh, I mean, I already have. Here we go. I found it. The Postmodern Creed, Chapter 5. This is on page 123. I am an absolutely free self, capital S, born randomly in the body I have. My body, which is my possession but not essentially me, places me in a given situation in which I inherit certain values from my parents, from the church I grew up in, from my country and from my culture. As I get older, I begin to break free from these values and either I begin to discover who I really am, or I decide to create who I will be. I may have a crisis of identity at some point during this period, but I eventually must be me. This I do by making my own choices of what I will be, choosing my own politics, my own church, my own styles, my own music, my own sexuality, even my own gender, etc. Whatever it is that defines who I am, such things must be freely chosen by me, capital M, capital E. I understand life as a journey whose paths are self-chosen, capital S. If there is some, quote, out there divine entity guiding me as I choose my path, it will communicate to me internally, personally. Along this journey, I may be assisted by certain gurus, both human and not so human, or not. And that's his creed. This reminds me very much of that. That's what I find. I don't know what you think. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about that.
What specific part?
Oh, I thought you might have something like interesting to say about it.
I have a lot to say, but I don't like. I want to. I do kind of like look at trying to get as far into the video as possible. So
yeah,
unless we're
what's the most interesting thing?
I would say free in capital letters, because the changing of the meaning of free is a very big part to the Gnostic heresy, and also to how post Enlightenment Europe kind of developed. And it's all kind of integrated, and we can just like go off on a trajectory here. But this idea of freedom as non-attachment is, of course, like this is like Gnostic freedom, right? Like attachment is everything that is coming from the demiurge. If you look at tarot cards, which have a huge interface with that, you have this devil card, and the devil is marked by having two chains onto humans, onto a man and a woman, kind of. This is what chains humanity. And then if you loosen these chains, if you're completely unattached, then you are completely free. This is why people nowadays like meditation so much, for example, because the idea and even the aesthetics of meditation are that you are without any kind of bound, which is kind of ironic, because in the end, what meditation does to you, it makes you behave as if you were the deepest amount of lockdown you could be, right? It makes you behave as if you were in like solitary confinement. But you attain this freedom, and this is kind of where life begins. And this is like there's strains of this kind of thinking, and they're not that uncommon, which kind of draw even a line between this is humanity, people who lose this attachment are humanity, and the rest are more or less cattle, the rest are machines. If you kind of see that kind of thinking, then you understand how what's it called, abortion makes sense to modern man, because the baby has not yet become human, because it is until now completely attached, not just to the mother in the womb, of course, but also the brain processes that are in the baby in the moment are completely, like, you can map them, you can model them with a computer, you can kind of recreate them, and they follow a deterministic pattern. So you say, oh, this baby is completely attached, that this is a machine, because your idea of, let's say, where the machine stops is that kind of unattachment, that capital F freedom, which is try living like that and see where it gets you, because of course the the outcome of these wonderful journeys is usually just loneliness and misery.
Right. Okay. Let's continue. Because I remember at one point Rollo goes, I don't care particularly about true churches, but I think that maybe these discussions might actually make him consider, if he's watching this, maybe there might be more to this.
Yeah.
Data. And we talk about like the pay gap, like the gender pay gap, 77 cents on the dollar. No, it's bullshit. And we have all the data in the world to disprove that. But we still cling to it. In fact, every election cycle, you hear exactly the same thing. Why is it that Joe Biden decided that he wanted to have an all-female like PR cabinet, or why did he want to have Kamala Harris as the vice president, who will eventually become the first female president? I'm convinced of that right now. But
this is a question for Settlers Lament. How close is Rollo Tomassi to becoming an anorexia?
I mean, I'm not an anorexer, so I don't know, but
is Rollo Tomassi reactionary?
Yeah. Like, when does he start?
I don't know. I mean, I always assume that everyone is just that like any degenerate or any like lib or whatever is only like one small push away from becoming a Latin Mass only sede vacantist monk.
I mean, the manosphere are kind of, I guess, the brothers, like the strange brothers of the Anoexis, at least according to Moldbug, who claims that their use of the red pill derives from his.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So who knows? Like, maybe he starts, like, the next Rollo Tomassi is going to be about the cathedral and
Mencius Rollbug.
Yeah, exactly. I found this guy, guys. He's like totally red pilled. He even called
plate spinning the cathedral.
Yeah.
Why is that even a thing? Well, it's old order thinking. Well, you know, women they've been disenfranchised for too long. We need to have an all-female. We want to have a feminist government. We see that in Sudan right now, which is weird because Sudan was an Islamic country. It was an Islamic state for a long time. It has a feminist. Go look it up. It has a feminist government right now. You look at like Sweden and these other places. You look at
but what are they really governing? Like 5 blocks in like Kotorum?
Let me look it up. Let's continue playing it.
The countries that are led or run by women, we're meant to believe that they're doing a better job at controlling COVID. Well, it turns out just the other day I read an article and a data set saying that it's bullshit. They're not doing any better, and some of them are doing worse, but they're certainly not doing any.
I mean, female queens on average cause more wars than male kings. So yeah, obviously.
Better than any male run.
And I mean, on the point of like Sudan, like I don't know, like abortion's illegal in Sudan, so it's like, is it feminist by Muslim standards? Maybe, but I don't really know like what's the point in saying that.
Modulus Modblog. So I see you watched the video that I posted of is Yu-Gi-Oh reactionary?
On UN Women's Twitter feed, but that's old order thinking that well they're female, so things must work better. Oh, my biggest criticism of Alpha God by Dr. Hector Garcia is he's brilliant at analyzing religion and masculinity and how do we get to connecting these dots, and then at the end of it, it's like the entire book is summed up as testosterone bad, masculinity bad. If we just put more women into positions of power, then we won't have wars, and then we'll have a better society, and things will be run so much better if we could. Or our religions, we don't need those religions. Clearly, the guy's atheist, but we don't need those religions anymore because they're patriarchal and they only serve men, and masculinity bad. Okay.
Is it possible that serving men is actually serving women? Just a thought. Maybe they have different needs. I don't know. I mean,
you just basically ruined the objectivity of the book, which I still think has merit, and I quoted it once or twice in this book. But the idea that that you're going to be anti-masculine, that's old order thinking, because we
see this is exactly why I suspect he has very strange ideas about religion, because philosophy of religion in Europe, particularly sociology of religion rather, is awful because it always has been awful. Max Weber is famous for the Protestant work ethic myth. And some of the things that he says about Calvinism explicitly contradict their articles of faith and their catechisms. And he doesn't appear to be aware of this. So I'm not surprised he'd come to some strange conclusions if he spent his time reading religious sociologists as opposed to actually reading the religions themselves.
Yeah.
Still think in terms that, well, women victim, women hurt, women, if we don't empower, we don't lift them up, we don't support them, we don't do this, we don't do that. If we don't make women our overlords, then we're bad men. That's old order thinking, because we still think that of women in terms of being a victim, of being like the Hebrews in chains in Egypt, right? Oh, let my people go. Well, we need to make the entire cabinet female. We need to make, camel.
Pharaoh is just It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh, can't let you women go. Or something.
Yeah. I just looked up the Sudan thing. I didn't like. I only skimmed it, but it seems like they had this government more or less takeover, something akin to a color
The feminist coup? Are you joking me?
Yeah.
Wait, seriously, a feminist coup in Sudan?
I think this is at least. I mean, it's a Washington Post article, so maybe they just kind of try to position it at like, look at these women taking over power, stuff like that. But basically, it seems like the old regime is out of power, and I guess the feminist movement and feminist voices were a big part in kind of the color revolution, and they are now
kind of been suppressed.
40% of the parliament.
Oh, I see. So what they did is they basically manipulated the population again to get a new Western-friendly power, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's basically the takeover of like contemporary American Westernism in Sudan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully, with any luck, that won't go on for too much longer. But we'll see.
Kamala Harris is going to be the first female president. We need to make the whole country of Sudan a feminist government. Old order thinking, because we still believe the bullshit. It's still effective, even because it feels good. I think, first of all, because it reconfirms, it reinforces belief sets that we think should be true, even though in the new order and in this new data age we have an understanding. We have the hard empirical truth right there, truth right there, that it's not. But we're not.
Well, I mean, still, this is ultimately dependent on interpretation, but
we're not trying to unplug ourselves. You think it's hard to unplug a guy from the Matrix when it comes to like how he deals with women? Imagine trying to unplug. You're not just dealing with that guy and getting laid or solving.
You know what? We should just call religion the hyper red pill, right? Because as we've explained, right, there's clearly more to the sexual act than what the red pill people think, and they clearly have some kind of advantage in understanding over the average blue pill guy. So why don't we just call it? I mean, we can't call it hyper red pill. Why don't we just call it normal? We'll call it normal. We'll call it normal behavior.
I mean, is it really normal though?
Yeah.
Is it normative?
Isn't
it exceptional at this point?
No, we shouldn't flatter ourselves by being exceptional, especially knowing what I've said in the confessional.
That's true.
No, we're just like it's just normal thinking. It was normal thinking for 90% of human history.
The problem is
I wouldn't like the word normal though. I would like something like appropriate, you know, something like that.
Proper.
It's like
proper.
Proper is perfect.
Yeah.
I think normal is perfectly good. I mean, even today, 85% of people on Earth are affiliated with, are officially affiliated with a religion, and even like most of that other 15% aren't really atheists either.
Yeah, but I mean, like in terms of sexual ethics.
Okay.
Deprogram that guy from the idea that women are she's this horrible, this helpless little victim. I need to protect her. I need to protect the babies. I need to there's so much that goes along with that. Trying to pull a guy who's really entrenched, and particularly if he's entrenched as a result of not just the blue pill, but his religion that is teaching him the blue pill, that's teaching him the romantic ideal. And that's another point that I make in this book. There's a whole chapter, by the way, that's dedicated to the romantic ideal. And the romantic ideal is essentially
next crossover with Gnosticism. So most Gnostic heresies kind of react to the church, and in usually the same way. And that is that they believe the church to be a vehicle of the demiurge, whereby to let's say stop people from achieving that kind of transcendental knowledge, the church is teaching the people the ways and the teachings of the demiurge and kind of keeping them down. This is part of almost every Gnostic heresy, and I think even though he might contest that in various points and even be correct in contesting that, it is still elusive to what Rollo is doing here, where he says that many people have a religion that is kind of infusing the blue pill into them.
Yeah, it's like kind of like he's got like the New World Order breaking the chains, you know.
Yeah.
The chains. Yeah.
Love / bastardized chivalry right now that we still maintain to this day. We still think of romance as the highest form. Romance is women's god right now. It's no longer what we thought God was. It's certainly not under patriarchal like Abrahamic faiths. It's no longer about that. It's about love is. In fact, there's another chapter in here. It's called "Love is God" rather than "God is love," because we've elevated the emotionalism of women to almost we've deified it. Right.
This is something that actually really annoys me. I completely agree with you. It really annoys me. Men do this as well.
This is one of his best points, actually. I think although maybe by contrast, I mean, it's something that this might imply for some people is to kind of steer away from that completely, even though I would not accuse him of saying it, because I think he even kind of specifies it where he says, it's not love is God, but God is love. But yeah, this... Oh, God, I lost my train of thought. No, but let's keep it at that. This is one of his best points in the whole video.
Yeah, one thing I would say, I was given by a priest friend of mine, 2 books. One on Saint Aelred of Rievaulx, a spiritual friendship, which is about basically developing friendships, but also through a theological lens. And another one called The Mystical Theology of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux by Etienne Gilson, I think it's pronounced. He's French, a famous 20th century Thomist. And Gilson explains in the book that there are 3 tiers of love in the spiritual life according to Saint Bernard. There is loving somebody for your own sake. There is loving God or loving somebody. I think he's referring specifically to God in this case. Loving God for your own sake, loving God for the sake of your own blessings, the blessings that you receive from God, and then loving God for his own sake. And if memory serves me, there's a 4th tier which is only obtained in heaven. But you see a similar thing manifest in actual human relationships, where you have kind of like a selfish love that you initially begin with, that women, like, this is the emotional puppy love, right? And it's burnt through very quickly. That's why women will, persist with a guy for 6 months to a year, not sure what to do when they reach the second stage, and so completely drop out. Then you have the 2nd tier, which is loving the person for the blessings you have, which is, marriage, right, to some extent. Or like, just general natural marriage kind of manifestation. You love your wife because she, she makes you, I don't know, like she looks after you when you're ill, right, or something like that. Not anything carnal, right? Like carnal things would definitely be for your own. Well, actually, even that would be for your own sake. But like, you love your wife for the sake of what she is. She's beautiful, she's intelligent, she, looks after the kids very well, right? And then you've got the highest tier where you love your wife purely because she is your wife and for no other reason, right? Like, regardless of what she does, right? And the lack of this hierarchical addressing of love in education, I think that a lot of women and guys don't know how relationships should actually develop, and therefore they just fall apart. And I think this also comes down... This is also a red pill problem as well, this problem with red pill people.
Yeah.
The spiritual life stuff can often be very strongly applied to marital life as well.
On my channel, I have a video which is called Procession Cycles, and in the end I also talk about the element of love, and I think that the misunderstanding of the meaning of love is let's say one of the main axes of decline in Western civilization. And I think that also this misunderstanding is actually like the entire hill Rollo is continually fighting on and fighting against. And the thing let's say use or the reasons I use in my video are the identification with love, with the prostitution of the term, of like, for example, make love not war, which is just more or less using it as a pretense, like a badly understood idea of it, as a pretense for your own messaging. And then of course people think that this is the proper meaning of love, even though, I mean, if you've even like heard of the Iliad, you know that love and war aren't things that are mutually exclusive at all.
Yeah, I mean, Achilles is a gigantic simp.
Yeah, and the other one is that the idea of, and he actually speaks about that in the video, is the idea of equating love with the feeling of love, which just kind of pushed us down a rabbit hole that we are not like. It's not just coom. It's also like it gave a lot of these slimy intellectual types the ability to say, "Oh look, this is what love really is," and point to some strange neuroscience
Oh
where
yeah,
they-
like Rollo does this. Like we know that love's a feeling; it's an evolutionary mechanism. No, it isn't.
Yes.
Not actual love. Like maybe the first tier, but like then you
No.
get into the realms where it's like this has to be correspondent to the immaterial operations of the human body, right?
Exactly. The problem with this understanding of love is that the people forget that you do not have this as a default. It activates, like the feeling of falling in love activates after you have fallen in love with a person.
Well, you know, like
So,
I'd ask I'd ask any neuroscientist because I've studied to some extent neuroscience, like at an academic level,
Yeah.
right? Like, please point to me where in the brain the willing of someone's good is, right? Because
Yeah.
I can't find it, because the will isn't under the influence of physical forces,
Yeah.
and so therefore it can't be material, and so it can't be in the brain. It must be immaterial. It's
Yeah.
a spiritual faculty, or a part of the spirit, right? As in distinction from the body, which are combined together under the soul, right?
Yeah.
It's and you know, like you have people like Donald Hebb and other neuroscientists who belittle this concept, but really this is just arrogance and not really thinking, not actually thinking through, you know, the implications of what humankind is.
Yeah. Okay, let's
Yeah,
continue.
let's continue.
We've made it a god. In fact, women will write "I am God" across their chest and jump up on an altar at the the cathedral in Germany or something like that at a Christmas mass. You know, and for what? To protest the lack of women or the exclusion of women from religion. Well, first of all, that's nonsense, but it sounds good, or it sounds like it's going to put it this way: the idea that women are
Yes, it's pride coom. You know, I'm just going to call them that. It's lust coom, there's pride coom, there's gluttony coom. Like, I mean, it's pride coom. Like, when a woman does that, it's like, yeah, look at my ego, look at me, I'm a woman, hear me roar. It's like, yeah, no one actually believes you, they just think you're really annoying.
Yeah.
Pride does blind, almost as much as, or more than lust, I'd argue. Right?
Yeah.
this oppressed class is a really good, like tribe, let's say, because it's a world tribe, is a good way of instilling an emotional response in women who are already predisposed to prioritize emotion before reason. So yeah, strip off your clothes, ladies.
Oh, so Tom David is giving the frontal lobe cope. Yeah, no, like, the very nature of the human will means that it can't be material, let alone having, like, I mean, there's a very strong argument to say that most of intellection is also as well, right? Like, for example, I have a stack of books on my desk, but there's nothing in the books themselves that tell me that it's a stack. They're separate books. And there's nothing in the books, in each of the books, to tell me that they're books. They're just collections of various, hydrocarbons. In terms of the ink, and then you've got, like, I suppose they're carbohydrates in terms of the actual pages, right? But yet it is still truly a book. Like, and this requires a level of intellection to be able to comprehend, which necessitates some means of comprehending that form, which is immaterial. Thus, we have spirit. We contemplate through spirit.
Yeah.
Jump around like tribeswomen around a trash can fire to celebrate abortion, the arrival of abortion in Argentina, a previously Catholic country. I don't know if it still is, maybe it isn't. But when you look, I just saw the videos of that. There was these big, huge celebrations in Buenos Aires, and I guess
actually, kind of like related to what I just said. This is why we can say that animals don't have souls in the same way. They don't have intellectual capacities because they understand accidents, which are things that are, of a certain form, but they don't comprehend the form itself. Like, my dog knows that the chocolate and the caramel and the biscuit, I mean, not the caramel, I never feed her caramel, but the biscuits, they're both sweet, and so she likes eating them, right? And she knows that the peas are, kind of bitter, so she won't eat them, right? But she doesn't know the difference between a biscuit and chocolate in any, like, intellectual sense. She doesn't cogitate, she doesn't cogitate consciously about whether she'll choose the chocolate or the biscuit. And I think you could probably pretty easily demonstrate this by putting the biscuit closer to her than the chocolate and then reversing it, right? There's no higher thought going on, and that's because she lacks the immaterial faculties to do so. But this is me just like going on about stuff that I might do my PhD on though.
That they are celebrating because now it's legal abortion. And again, I'm not making a moral issue of this. You can. I think it's a mistake to make it a moral issue.
At least he's anti-abortion.
Yes,
out the gate.
This is something I also found. Let's get into it here maybe, because I guess we're not getting that much further into the stream, and we're close to hitting onto the Q&A, and maybe we'll do that as well. So this is something I found really surprising, but I really find commendable. is how strongly anti-abortion he is, because he really depicts this as the despicable act that it is. But the problem I'm having is that he seems to only see the one half of the equation, and way towards the end, he even goes into like the whole thing. Like, this is something that the red pilled guys always gone about. It's kind of the woman, she had her fun and now she has 2 children. She's a single mom and she wants to settle down. She wants to get some loser to supply for her, and you don't want to be that loser. And they completely take the men out of the equation. So I previously mentioned my mother and the situation of my mother, and I actually thought about before that stream whether or not I want to mention that or not, but here we go. So my mother, she separated from my father, and then she had 2 additional sons with a new life partner. And the separation from my father was not her wanting the coom, there were other reasons for that. And then the new life partner she wanted to share life with and settle down with, have a family with, so on and so forth. But he was also brought up on this entire like modern drivel of, oh, you have to be free, capital F free, and he finds a woman. So he lives very far away from my mother. He always had to drive a long route through Germany to see her, and along the route he finds a woman, and that woman always gives him input of the idea of, oh, she's manipulating you, she's making you dependent, she's using your children.
So she's trying to sneak in.
Yeah, and she sneaks in, and he starts having an affair with her, and he starts letting my mother down. And now she's in a position where he cheated on her, and she is in that same position of 2 children. Again, I'm already out of the house, but she has 2 children in that are rather young, and she wants a life partner, and she doesn't like. She's never like gone down the carousel. She had 2 life partners in her life, and but the flaw here is very much with the kind of like the male pendant, and the thing that Rollo also pushes for is kind of like, relationships are fight, like either you prepare for her cheating on you, or you're the sucker, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's sort of seizing frame, isn't it? And you have to get your frame somehow.
I mean, I am completely in favor of the idea of frame control. I would even go so far as to say that the obligation of the church, insofar as politics is concerned, is to control the frame of the countries that are Catholic.
Yeah, I agree, but he advocates doing it through talking to multiple women at once, at least in Rational Male Volume 1, right? He says like monogamy is never the goal.
Yeah, I mean, but that would not be frame control. This is more like, that is more the part where you get into like pushing buttons.
What's the name of the thing? Sphere. That's it. Spheres. He talks about having her in your sphere as opposed to being in hers, right? Which I suppose is similar to frame. Yeah, it's similar to frame.
Yeah, similar to frame. It's like kind of exactly like, where's the dependency? As long as the dependency of her rests upon you, everything is good. And then like the idea of growing into one, of like platonic love, where you are not one person, you are one half of 2. Like this is something there's no way of getting into that through red-pilled thought and red-pilled thinking. And so he continually laments the one half of the, let's say, the separation of the sexes, and he points out how women are having abortions, and he points out how women are behaving immorally and how it hurts women in the end, and all that kind of jazz. But he never points out the other half. He never says, oh yeah, like men shouldn't do the same either. And I get his idea, like his justification of, well, there's a struggle involved there, and you have to kind of master the struggle, and that is true. But you can revoke the idea that lifelong celibacy is an alternative, is something that doesn't appear in kind of manosphere thinking. The idea of the entire thing the manosphere is kind of trying to pull off is kind of coaxing women back into the traditional role by kind of like outplaying them at their own game. But the thing you have to do is like you have to actually crash the game. You have to say, okay, I either settle for a virgin or I'm not going into that at all. If you're that radical, and if like a lot of men are that radical, like able to do that, then the what he calls like the gynocentric world order or whatever, it goes over in a blast, like in a microsecond.
Well, I mean,
and he might say, "Oh,
they
that's
would
real
say,
nature and stuff like that."
I mean, they would just say like, "Oh, but then Chad will just go to the nightclub and have sex anyway." It's like, yeah, but that's surrendering to a lesser good, right? Which is precisely what you don't like the beta doing, because the beta surrenders to like a girl who has been, who has gone and done all of the licentiousness as well. But by doing like I say, but like going out and doing what Chad or whatever they call him is, he isn't really Chad though. Does
Exactly.
You're looking for a lesser good. I mean, Chad isn't even Chad. Like you see some of these guys who are like athletic or whatever, or in good like physical shape, and they're in the nightclub, and like they're like 10 pints down, and they're like crying. They're crying because they have no self control, right?
Yeah.
It's like many of these guys are like these players or whatever they call them. They're pathetic, a lot of them, and it's because they don't have control.
I'm at a private uni in Germany, and all the people around me, they're like very young, usually incredibly athletic. Most of them are part of some like high-end sports team in some discipline or another. Rich families, at the moment having a great education, set up for a perfectly well life. And we have a lot of parties here, organized by the students. I mean, the students organize 500,000 euro parties where they themselves attend. Like, they have the key to the VIP range, everything, and they fail at getting.
Oh man, it's better than the ones that we had. Like where we'd I'd go to house parties and I'd sit there with like, I don't know, 6 liters of cider. I mean, I used to live pretty badly. I used to be like, I think the most I had in one night was like 23 pints of beer, which for those who speak European, that would be like 12 liters, right?
Yeah.
Like we'd just go down pub, muck around with some of the girls at nightclubs, right? Just completely off our faces, right? Like none of this like I can't talk to girls stuff. Like some of the crazy stuff I got down to, man. Like, oh, in front of girls that like me as well. Oh. You're reminding me, yeah. But like a lot of them are just so pathetic, right? Like,
yeah.
Like I remember like positing something that I thought was there have been a lot of cases where I posited things that I thought were obvious, and like men around me will just give me this look like I'm like really edgy or something. It's like, I'm only going to go talk to her or something like that. It's like nothing like over the top. Like, I'm not like hyper masculine. I look like a 12-year-old, right? But, but, like, there's a lot of these guys who will look like hyper Chad or Giga Chad or whatever, or they'll be like in the gym, or even one of these red pill types, and they'll just be looking at the floor, not able to talk to a woman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's she going to do? Like, tell you that you're gay? Okay, so what?
Yeah.
Oh no.
I mean, I guess the red pill types would say, "Oh yeah, that's the true game" and stuff like that. But the point we're making here is much more that, like, confident, like not that confidence is the true game, but much more that, like, game is not the true game in a sense.
Virtues. I mean, I always thought that that when I first read Tomassi's book and I started spending time around more of the red pill people, I thought that a lot of the game was really just kind of simulating virtue, right? Because you're spinning plates in order to seem more confident to the women around you, right? And this is and you could just get this out of virtue anyway and not waste hours talking to women.
Yeah. Like
women who you're not even interested in and you're only interested in for the sake of a vice.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, come on. Like, you could be building your career, you could be going to the gym, and instead you're talking to 4, 5, 6 women on the go, because that gives you the confidence to be able to talk to each of those individual women. It's
maybe to put all of this into perspective, like what game gives you and what game doesn't give you. I had when I got into the whole manosphere stuff, like I had a friend. We're still friends now. Maybe he's even watching the stream right now. I don't know, but we were kind of co-developing, and I got into this whole manosphere stuff, and he said, I don't know, I think all of that comes to you naturally, and he kind of started more developing his virtue and going down that kind of route. And like his interests at the time and even today, like Yu-Gi-Oh, very obscure anime, and very very like niche movies. And he's I guess he was going to the gym like occasionally, but he's more on the kind of like skinny side of things, you know. And we had the same experiences. Me with all the tricks, all the nags, all the like we had the same experiences in nightclubs, give or take, like the same like comparable rates of attractiveness, comparable stories to tell of like, you know, then this girl, we're going home and stuff like that. And the one guy, he like all of game, basically all of learning game, of lifting, of getting your clothes in order, versus he at that time he only wore black. I guess like no, that time he was transitioning from only wearing black to wearing black and gray, only wearing black and gray, talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, niche anime and niche movies, but being genuinely interested in becoming a good person. And like that makes up the entire range of it, like fully.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that like virtue is obviously related somewhat to, you know, a lot of the game concepts. Right, like a lot of it is just social intelligence.
Yeah.
Right, and going to the gym, I mean I don't think I need to tell anybody, like when I was going to the gym 5 times a week, like you know, the way I was talking to women like shot up. And even when I didn't, right, like just because of what I was reading and the channel I was running here, like, you know, I like the confidence that I got through YouTube or whatever, or the books I was reading or whatever, like that would come through in conversations, and a lot of women really loved it. Right, like I remember I was once in a pub, and I was taking like a friend of mine who had learning disabilities out for food, and it was just the two of us. We came across these 2 girls who were caring for the disabled in some part of the town. One of them was from Italy, and one of them was from Kenya, right? And I was kind of flirting with the Italian girl, but the Kenyan girl was like she like said, like, I bet you've had like 100 girlfriends, rather. 100 boyfriends. That serves me right. Thanks God for humiliating me there. Yeah, but it was because I'd been reading all the scriptures and reading all of the fathers and stuff like that, right? That was the reason for it, right? Yeah, like just developing the virtue. Like, don't bother with any of this game stuff, right? Like, some of it is useful. Like, I was dabbling in their books because I figured, well, I might have another thing I can learn from this, right? There might be some stuff here that might be interesting. I can apply in my life, and there was some stuff, you know. But no, the best stuff comes directly from the Bible. The best stuff, like the Philokalia, the first 2 volumes have been incredibly useful. St. John of the Cross, his works, the ones I've read, Sent of Mount Carmel, but apparently you're not supposed to begin there, but I did anyway. You know, like there's all kinds of books that I went through, right? That is far more effective than simply focusing on game techniques and keeping plates spinning.
Mm.
In fact, sometimes it might even be the case where you end up spinning plates without even being aware of it. You know? But I digress. Let's continue.
It can be, but I think it's more important to see the legalization of abortion as a power differential, heavily leaning over towards feminism and the female imperative, because that's really what you have to look at, what the latent purpose and latent function of abortion is, and they're celebrating it, and they're celebrating not just in Argentina but all over the world. Because
well, I mean, I'd say that the main purpose of abortion was originally to free up women so that powerful men could exploit them. But,
I think it's more of a you know, your scientists didn't didn't ask if they could. They should have asked if they should, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, yeah.
They're celebrating the world tribe of women. Wow, if they've finally been set free, now they can kill babies. Now they can have a fail-safe against bad reproductive choices. Now and so how do? They strip off their clothes, write slogans across their tits, and dance around fires and sing and dance like tribeswomen. I think it was Camille Paglia who said that if civilization were left up to women, we'd still be living in grass huts. And when you watch videos of the women celebrating that in Argentina, stripping off their clothes and running around with, you know, green hair and looking really like tribeswomen of some sort of, you know, Amazon rainforest. I don't know what the hell. I wouldn't even insult them with that. But when you look at that, you go, this is very tribalistic. Look at this. It's shamanistic, tribalistic, whatever you want to call it. And that's where they devolved to. Why? Why is that? Well, it's a celebration, not so much about abortion, but it's about a power shift. And why do we knuckle under that? Why does the Roman Catholic Church
Well, actually, wait.
say, okay, it's cool, ladies, go ahead, and we're going to give you legal and safe abortion? Because
I don't think the Catholic Church has never endorsed abortion. In fact, actually, procuring an abortion is excommunicate. You're excommunicated if you acquire an abortion.
Yeah. It is. I think he thinks that because Argentina is a Catholic country, that the Catholic Church went along with it.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that's gone on in South America.
I think I know what he's referring to, because this is a popular meme among progressives. There's this. I don't know if this is where the meme was started, but I know there's this book that some progressive woman wrote called "Your Handbook to the Religious Right" or something like that, and it has a chapter specifically claiming that the Catholic Church used to endorse abortion.
No, it didn't.
And this is completely false. It's just made up. Or I mean, it's not made up. It's based on something, but like what
I know. I think
not endorsement of abortion.
I think I know what they're referring to.
What? Yeah. What's it? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you were going to finish, or do you want me to explain where it's from?
Okay. Yeah. No. What it is based on is there was not an automatic excommunication for early term abortions until I can't remember exactly what year, but sometime in the latter half of the 1800s. So this was interpreted as because there wasn't an automatic excommunication for early term abortions, this was interpreted as an endorsement of early term abortions. That of course was not true. There were canonical penalties for this. There just wasn't an automatic excommunication.
I mean, like that's like saying, well, you don't get automatically excommunicated for sodomizing a man, right?
Yeah,
it's still a sin that cries to heaven. It's still a sin that cries to heaven for vengeance.
This is clearly just something from someone who doesn't understand anything about Catholic theology.
So I thought that the origin was actually in Numbers chapter 5, where there's a particular ritual for determining whether or not a woman has conceived through adultery or not. And they interpret, like there's some specific wording, like her, like something like her thigh will be destroyed or something like that. And they think that refers to like a woman, kind of like I've already made this very clear at the beginning of the video. If you've got children in the room, don't listen. So I'm going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so a woman prolapsing her her parts and the baby coming out with it. This is only the opinion of a couple of rabbis, and pretty much everyone else believes that that's not the case, right? Like this could be the one of the locations, but now you've explained that, that's irrelevant.
Times are changing, right?
Yeah, no,
we're all advancing, we're evolving.
That is something that
right? That's what we're doing.
Well,
maybe the old order,
the verse and numbers. And yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. The NIV unfortunately translates that verse as inducing a miscarriage. It's the only major translation that translates it that way.
I see. The nearly inerrant version.
Yeah. So basically, what progressives will do is they'll just cite it and they'll say, "Hey, it's just in the Bible what the Bible says." Turning into evangelical Christians, I guess. And then like you'll cite, well, that's literally only that one translation, and that's the most liberal translation out there.
The message is far worse.
Oh yeah, but yeah, one of the message isn't really that popular, is it?
I mean, it's a meme one, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, man, Houston, we have a problem. My cursor has become hidden, so if I want to end the stream, I can't actually see it. The button for ending the stream. So I guess we're here for a while until it comes back.
Well, I think YouTube will end it automatically after 12 hours.
Well, I will.
Maybe we'll get halfway into Rollo.
We got it back. Thanks be to God.
Okay,
good.
Way of thinking about things, even if it wasn't objectively true, it was a better way of doing things than it is to keep that power balance, because that's really what it amounts to. It's not so much a religious thing as it is a power balance. And I'm not saying it's not a religious thing, it is, but it is first and foremost a power shift or power differential from the masculine to the feminine. And we've had 55, 60, almost 60 years of that right now. So sorry, people keep saying, oh, he doesn't talk with a mic very well. All right, let me go back and grab your questions. If you have questions about the book particularly, I would be happy to answer them for you.
Right, so this is the Q&A section. Was there any specific bits you want us to jump to?
I mean, No, nothing I would have time marked. I mean, there's like interesting stuff in the Q&A section, but I don't think we have the
Oh
time
man,
to
there
get
was one
into it,
bit
and
that
it's completely tangential.
there were a bunch of bits that I sort of bookmarked. We'll go through these. I'll tell you what, sounds like a good idea. We'll go through these and then we'll finish, because there's a bunch of them that I thought were worth responding to. So we'll first of all go to, I think it was around about the 1 minute 52 mark, 1 hour and 52 minutes mark. So I will just find that. We'll go 30 seconds beforehand, right? So we can sort of get an introduction. There we go. Perfect.
For me, that's very Christ-like, right? Like what did God do, or Christ do, right? Died on the cross for our sins, to forgive us of our sins. Sounds a lot like masculine expectations of women for men, right? I mean, you're supposed to sacrifice. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to forgive, right? That's why forgiveness is such a big deal for women, because it absolves them of the decisions that they make. One of the reasons why abortion is celebrated is because it absolves women of bad reproductive choices. Of course.
Like, I thought this was a really, really annoying equivocation. Like, I remember, like, I mean, obviously, like, Christ forgiving your sins on the cross doesn't de-habituate you out of the sins.
Yeah.
And therefore, like...
I mean...
Like... Yeah, go ahead.
I think what he laments here is... And what he laments in all of it, more or less, it's kind of Protestant, like, looseness with term. Because he's completely correct that in many Protestant or born-again Christian circles, that kind of stuff, like, the forgiveness of sins is kind of, okay, all of that has happened, and now it is... you are completely free from it. And of course, when you go, for example, to confession, then you're not supposed to look back on it. Like, the sins are in your past, but that doesn't mean that the things you carry from them are not with you anymore. Like, if we reduce it to a purely material kind of senses, let's say a sin would be, in the material sense, would be a hacking of your arm, and then you can say, okay, the forgiveness for that, I guess, in the material sense, would like be bandaging your arm, and so that you don't bleed to death, and then afterwards you're not in immediate danger anymore, but and you can say, okay, this is in the past now, but you're not getting your arm back, right? And I, like, to his credit, he doesn't make this point, he laments this point, and he laments it completely justly, that a lot of what forgiveness has turned into in the modern West is not just that the that the arm stops bleeding, but that the arm grows back.
Well,
And that is, of course, not the case.
In fact, this is actually a point from Aquinas' On Evil, or Dame Marlowe, that I wish would be emphasized more, and that is the distinction between moral and physical evil, right? This kind of belief of the forgiveness of sins, just getting rid of any kind of sinful inclination you have, I mean, that's just not correspondent to reality. Like, and you can't really conflate the both, because when you engage in evil, it physically changes you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you become habituated into masturbating, for example, right? Like, on a chemical level. Same with fornication. Same with blasphemy. Same with anything else. And obviously there's also diseases of the spirit as well, right? When you are forgiven of the moral evils insofar as you're culpable before God, right? That is what the sacrament does. But you still have the habituation there. Now, you may receive graces from the confession to assist in that, but, you know, it will often still be there. Like, aside from some, I mean, it's a miracle, the sacrament in itself, but aside from, like, a really, really good confession.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe as a point for the ladies, for the Christian ladies, it is the insight that counts. And if you engage in sin, then that is the insight you're attacking on. And you can recover some of that, but you might take away scarring. And an outside scar can be beautiful, but an inside scar is always hideous.
Yeah, I mean, like, you see, like, a lot of these women who will, like, very clearly have serious mental problems, or, like, obvious physical defects, will go on, oh, the inside that counts, and they use this as a cope for their negative behaviours, right? And it's like, no, that's just cope. You need to go to the gym. You need to eat better. You need to start praying. You need to start reading good books. Like, put down Harry Potter and pick up, I don't know, G.K. Chesterton. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, bit of a meme choice there. Maybe, like, I mean, some people like C.S. Lewis, right? But you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
They want to
Read the
accept
fathers.
that.
I don't think women should be reading the fathers.
No, no.
Really. I think that
Yeah.
there's only a special kind of man that can really read the fathers, right? They're very dense, very difficult to read.
Yes, you're special. You're special, Elliot.
I am. I got my I've got my badge on. You can't see it in my hat. You know. Be patient. Yeah.
They make that even an article of faith in some like more progressive, liberally, Presbyterian, Methodist, Lutheran.
Man, progressive Presbyterian churches, were they predestined for cringe?
Well, I think most of the liberal Presbyterians have given up predestination because it's racist.
Oh.
Okay, so they've literally become the Arminians that they fought a civil war with.
I mean, I have seen some progressive Calvinists, but I think they normally give up the predestination stuff.
I mean, they shouldn't. I mean, that's, even Catholics hold to predestination, right? Like, this isn't commonly known, but, Augustinianism is still, like, a predominant view of grace in the Catholic Church. There are alternative views, like Molinism, but in a certain sense, there's still, like, predestination there. It's just that God... I mean, you know what, this is kind of irrelevant, but basically... I'll say it. So, No, I shouldn't. We've got half an hour left. I shouldn't go through.
Let's not get into that. I know, like the conversation you're referring to. That conversation took 3.5 hours.
Yeah, middle knowledge. Okay, middle knowledge versus just Augustinianism.
Trying to think of the Christian franchises where they're trying to put abortion sort of on the table ethically and morally. Now, well, they're not real Christians, okay, but they're still trying to do it, and they're still trying to make it work. Why? Why are they trying to make it work? Well, because forgiveness works really well for women. Because when they get to be 29 and they've got 3 kids from 2 different fathers, they want to be forgiven of all that, and they don't want men to be judgmental. Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Yeah, but the thing is, they judge themselves.
I have a video on that verse actually.
Yeah. I don't like the constant repeating of that. And Rollo, I can't remember if it's in this particular bit or not. He goes on to say like, oh well, Jesus said, those with I think it's
splinter in their own eye.
Yeah,
beam in their own eye.
The beam. It was a beam. It was either a beam or a tree, and I couldn't remember which one. Those who have a beam in their eye shouldn't be judging those with a splinter, and then progressives use that as like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the fact that hell exists, and if they persist in that until death and don't repent, then
also
it's cope.
There's people who don't have a beam in their own eye. What he's referring to there is something that is very common in humans, that we do see, like the flaws that we immediately take up upon with others are the flaws that we see in ourselves. That's very true. But for example, there's flaws that you are completely indifferent to, which you only notice through other means. So, for example, if they're extremely overt, and you will also try to help others by pointing those flaws out. In that case, you do not have a beam in your own eye. These are things you're completely clear of. So, for example, let's say you have a completely chaste, like fully chaste bishop. He will not immediately pick up on adultery the way the people who struggle with it themselves will immediately go, "You're an adulterer." But after a while, when he gets to know you, like when he figures you out, he says, "I think you have you're engaged in adultery here, and maybe even just of the mind of the spirit." And at that point, he doesn't have a beam anymore. And these are things you can tell with people. So yeah, the beam in your own eye is really just for the moments where people have a beam in their own eye. You can't criticize others for their mistakings as long as you know what like a proper misconduct is, and as long as you are really free from emotional involvement in that topic.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jesus even says, take it out first. And then do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there is like a time. It's like, and then you've got the person going and judging you back, and he wasn't. I mean, they weren't intending to not be hypocritical. They were intending to cover their own bum.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing you should do, like for yourself, like from your own position, is if you have the inclination to criticize someone, always say, okay, is this something I'm seeing in myself, or is this something I only see in the other person? And like most of the time, you will say, okay, this is something I'm seeing in myself. And that is exactly the point where you have to take the beam out first. But very, very occasionally, something will just hit on you. Like you're in a group assignment and one guy never shows up because he's completely lazy. Now you are indifferent to laziness. But that is the case where you say, okay, look, man, like let's work on that laziness together. Like those are the cases where he has no right to say, oh, look into the beam in your own eye first.
Like, yeah, what beam? Are you able to see that? Well, maybe you should do some thinking yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is it? Don't. I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to totally butcher this. Don't pluck the mote out of my.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So
let's
already
skip to the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So there was another one around about.
Should I just read your timestamps?
No, I've got them here. I'm just trying to find out where there's other ones because there was some I didn't put in brackets. There was the civil marriage thing, and he was that was at 2 minutes and 3, but we won't repeat that because it's not that interesting. Basically, it's like there was a war in Mexico between the Christians and the Catholics and the Masonic government, an atheistic government, over civil marriage. They lost. Just saying, you're basically following what the state's saying. I mean, this isn't really much of an argument, and he doesn't really seem to understand what sacrament actually is. But that's apropos. That's besides the point. We'll go to 2 minutes and 9 seconds. I had something noted here, and I noted something along the lines of he doesn't.
Oh, actually, I want to do 2 minutes and 2 hours and 3 minutes, like the one you're just skipping over.
Okay.
Because I think this is one of the most central things in the manosphere, is the divorce situation in the US and other Western nations by proxy.
Okay, we've got like 25 minutes before I'm going to close down. Let's go through this and we'll go through the other timestamps. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go.
100% authority and 0% responsibility, or they take whatever responsibility they want, and that is useful, and then just to build themselves up, I guess. But for men, it's always about responsibility. Now, put that into a religious context, where your religion says you are a man and men must be responsible for their families and their wives. So if your wife acts up, or your wife decides that she wants to be an OnlyFans, girl, or get into softcore and hardcore porn later on, like my friend that I did the interview with and his wife, even after.
That was one thing I wanted to mention. Jesus actually says explicitly in the Gospels that if she's engaging in fornication, you can put her away. Now, that doesn't mean that you can divorce her. Cornelius a Lapide, who's one of the famous commentators on scriptures, is very keen to emphasize this. Putting away is essentially meaning, like, you can put her out of your bed. You don't, because in Catholic marriage, you're obliged to have sex. Like, this is one of the things that doesn't often get talked about. You're obliged to have sex with your partner, insofar as you're able, insofar as she asks, or he asks, right? If she's fornicating or do softcore or hardcore porn, as he says, you can put her out of your bed. You don't have to talk to her. Obviously you have to look after the kids. But you could never be divorced, right? You can't.
Yeah.
You don't cease to be one flesh because of that. It just means that you don't have any obligation to her sexually. At least sexually. I don't know if it goes further than that. Like Cornelius a Lapide he spends like a page talking about the distinctions, because he was writing at the beginning of the 17th century, and you had a lot of Protestant theologians saying that divorce was A-OK because of this line. No, not so. Yeah.
Kind of sending her back to her family.
And of course, like the kinds of men who would put up with that from a woman, like, you best bet. I hope that God doesn't curse me with like someone who would behave like that, unless it's for my good, right? Which it probably, if it's happening, it is, right? But I tell you, she wouldn't be in a good situation, because I'm not about to like simp to that kind of behaviour. That's like, that's one of my bugbears, right? She'd definitely be put out of that bed. She'd do anything like that.
Yeah.
And I'd live my life celibately for the rest of the time.
She was a Baptist minister. Then you're left holding the bag, and now
she was a
you're
Baptist minister.
That's this one case.
Yikes.
With the Baptist minister who turned into an OnlyFans actress. It's this famous case in the United States. It happened.
No, but I just mean if it's a she.
Yeah. I thought. Yeah.
It's what you should expect.
Yeah, that's where the problem is. Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, I mean, like, unironically, even if you want to like go sola scriptura and everything, she's already just ignoring parts of the New Testament. So, why not ignore a bit more?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, there's teaching in the church that women have now got lector positions. I mean, there's various reasons for this. Like, I hope it was permitted because there's just like a huge amount of women who are already doing that anyway. But like St. Paul says, suffer not a woman to teach, right? As a discipline.
Yeah.
As a discipline, so
Yeah.
the church can actually do that and not violate the infallible magisterium. So we have to bear that in mind. Although it's certainly not a preferable situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, she went the whole hog. She ran her own congregation, which is like definitely verboten.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think like I think there's a very big difference between a woman reading Bible quotes and a woman actually trying to be a pastor.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine a woman doing homily. I can't imagine a woman doing homily. I'm sorry, I completely threw my mind off. Let's continue because he gets into the civil divorce thing.
Only going
Yes.
through sort of a secular trauma or secular crisis, you're also going, as a guy, you're going through a religious crisis because you're supposed to be 100% responsible for women. We're supposed to protect them. We're supposed to love them as Christ loved the church. We're supposed to, have all of this, responsibility for wife and...
This is a very selective reading of St. Paul. Like, yeah, he does say that in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21 through 32 or something like that, right? Yeah, he says, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Yes, of course, but that doesn't mean that you have to, like, put up with intimacy from a woman you know is cheating with you. They're cheating on you, right? Like, Christ makes this clear.
The church is not able to cheat on Christ.
Well, I mean, they did throughout the Old Testament, and look what happened to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sort of gets to a very pernicious modern redefinition of love. And this isn't even necessarily an exclusively left-wing thing. This is more of just sort of a modern thing. That when people say love nowadays, very often what they mean is affirm everything I do. So like, obviously, when St. Paul said to love your wives as Christ loved the church, like he did not mean to, like, affirm everything your wife ever does and say nothing she ever does is wrong. But just because of like the lens we have, when people read that, that's how they read it.
I mean, like, if she's engaging in that kind of thing, even on a very minor level, you better bet she's getting showered at.
I mean, the issue with that, or the origin with that, is that the Christian understanding of love kind of still held true, where love is wanting the best for the other, in a sense, but the best for the other just kind of got
Subjectivized.
personalized, exactly, subjectivized, where it's like, oh, only she knows what is best for her, and in that case,
Even
like,
she doesn't know what's good for her. I don't know what's good for me.
exactly, like you can, if you have a wife, one of the things that are best for her is being in a monogamous relationship with you. Like, this is something you can take on, like, you take on gold. Like, this is what is best for her because she has already chosen that vocation with you, that life with you. So every decision she makes against that is going against what is best for her, and so enabling her in that in any way, shape, or form is directly contradicting you loving her.
Someone said in the comment section, Rollo reveals the chip on his shoulder when it comes to religion. Otherwise solid writer, but he's got an axe to grind, probably from the megachurch youth he was subjected to. No, actually, he says in this that his dad was a hardcore atheist, and he's religious, to some extent. What I would say is that he's certainly got, like, 20th century sociological assumptions when going to religion, which he should never have, because they're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to understand what a religion is saying, go and read the primary texts, and go talk to the priests, and go talk to the bishops, and whatever. Now, you don't have to do this with everything. Like, for example, I don't do this with Hinduism, because I already know that there's errors in the fundamental assumptions of a lot of Hinduism, right? Pantheism in a few of the schools, for example, Pelagianism in other ones. In fact, I think all of them are essentially Pelagian, which doesn't actually make sense considering some of them are actually classically theist. Like, you'd think that, like, Pelagianism would just fall flat in that model, but, never mind, right? They contain errors. I know enough to like dismiss them there. But if you're going to do a sociological study into religion, particularly as it intersects with the red pill, right? Go and read your stuff. right? Don't just read the sociologists. Don't go read the Bible without a commentary. Don't ignore the fathers, right? Go and actually give it a really hardcore study, because you need to. This is a system that has ran Western Europe and most of the West for 2,000 years. There's a lot of information to consume to actually process this correctly, and I think we're seeing the manifestation of these errors here. As Max Weber did, as Brett Weinstein does, as Jordan Peterson does. The whole evolutionary attitude towards the Torah. I mean, I think that Brett Weinstein is a Jew, right? He should know that the Torah is not evolutionarily predisposed in any way at all. I was reading. This is, of course, unrelated to civil marriage. I want to address this evolutionary point now, in case we don't have time, right? You have Weinstein saying, all these rules, like the kosher laws, they were all for, they were there for just purely evolutionary reasons. Okay, so let's actually go read Leviticus's prohibitions on food, right? Whatever parts, this is chapter 11, verse 3. Whatever parts the hoof and is cloven-footed and chews the cud among the animals you may eat, right? This has nothing to do with the quality of the meat. Plenty of people have lived off of camels for thousands of years, and yet camels violate these rules, right? Another example. In Exodus, when Moses institutes the covenant, he says, "This is the blood of the covenant," and then splashes the people with the blood, right? Now, you could go like Jordan Peterson symbolism, or typology. Perfectly fine. But what's going to happen? Are the people of Israel going to catch the blood of the cow in their mouth and develop some sort of crazy gene or some sort of other thing? No, I mean, of course not. It's contrary to the Levitical laws as well to drink blood. And one of the strange things about this evolutionary psychology thing is that it assumes there's some sort of society brain that manages all the other people in the society, which we have no evidence of. There's some people are gay because they have to take care of the children in the tribe because the mind soul of the particular tribe tells them to, right? Okay, where's the evidence of this? I know that Jolly Heretic engages in this a lot. It really annoys me. There's no proof of the society soul, right? This is an old idea from Averroes, actually, that was refuted by Aquinas when he was talking to Sigler of Brabant on, I think it's the Unity of the Intellect, I think it's called, right? That's where this comes from, but there's no scientific proof of it. And finally, the sacrificing of Abraham's only begotten son on the wood, right? So Abraham sends off Hagar and his child of the flesh in such a way that he can't guarantee the kid's safety, right? So he doesn't even necessarily... He can't ensure that the kid is safe himself, right? I can't remember if God says he'll be safe or whatever, right? So what does he do? He takes his only begotten son up and sacrifices him because God says so. Isn't this directly contrary to evolutionary logic? And yet, the seed of that sacrifice are the children of Israel, right? Isn't this completely contrary to evolutionary logic? Now, if this is the case, why is this in the very first book of the law, in the very first half of the book, in the first book of the law, right? Doesn't work, does it, Weinstein? So perhaps stop trying to force an evolutionary framework on something that doesn't take it, because it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think to kind of expound on that, the idea that Weinstein has of religion is more or less very modern in a sense, but kind of dressed up in a bit of spook.
By the way,
basically what he's saying is religion.
We should probably clarify. This is because Rollo basically echoes him in this video.
Yes. I guess we don't get to that. I guess we maybe just talk about some of the points he makes. I think getting into the specific points, finding the minutes, that all of that takes time away that we don't have. So what Weinstein kind of is on about is that, if you act like this, then you gain an advantage, even though you don't know how that advantage comes about. As Elliot just said, it's kind of evolutionary thing where as long as you don't eat pork, you don't get whatever food disease, and over time those tribes get along, even though they don't know the reason for which their ethics system works and for which it doesn't. It's this blind ethics system, and then he kind of also does what we accuse Gnostics of doing, or what Gnostics are doing, is he now with modern science, modern science is his way of getting past the demiurge of ignorance, of the blind ethics systems, and he now understands the reasons for these various things. And now that he understands the reasons for these various things, he can selectively kind of go through them and say, okay, this we can keep and this we throw away. So we throw away, for example, all the dietary restrictions. We just have proper food now and all that kind of jazz. And then we can also throw away, for example, the marriage restrictions, because we know for this and this and this and this reason, back in the day, gay marriage just wouldn't work, but we can adjust for that now. And then you have this small little model here and your
It's
small
not
little
last
model
Thursday
there.
anymore, is it? So we can just, it's not last Thursday, so we can just do whatever we want.
Exactly.
Also, someone responded, Stephen Mulroney said, as far as I know, every instance of the adaptation of, I think it's species-specific adaptation, which he's referring to here, is tied to frequency-dependent selection. Not saying I'm buying it, but that's my understanding. I mean, I just fail to see why it would make sense for certain groups of the hive, without some sort of overmind coordinating them, to sacrifice themselves. It seems contrary to evolutionary reasoning.
No, there is. I have to contradict that, because in Richard Dawkins' Selfish Gene, he actually shows, and there's even some like evolutionary channels on YouTube who like do a lot of evolutionary stuff where this is one of their biggest wins basically, where they show how altruism and self-surrendering manages to advance the genome as a whole.
Not as much as ethnocentrism does. I've seen the simulations too.
I know which ones you're talking about, but it would be in-group preferential, let's say, self-surrendering. But you kind of get to that point, like you kind of like die down there, because basically what you get to is that you, on the one hand, you want your in-group to be sacrificing themselves for each other, but then within each system where there's cooperative elements, a smaller subgroup can form that only uses the cooperation in one way, and does not cooperate with all the others. So
you're incentivizing
continual refinement of the most selfish subgroup murders the one that came before it, but still has to form a new kind of altruism amongst itself to be more advantageous, to be better than all the other selfish subgroups that form.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. The altruistic genes, in some sense, get selected out.
Yeah.
Unless they develop otherwise in the selfish group. Yeah. Contradictory.
Yeah. So I guess ethnocentrism is the way to go. Thank you, Dawkins.
Yeah. Dawkins the FNAT.
Yeah. No, but the point I wanted to get to with Weinstein and the evolutionary thing is that, of course, you can see this maybe, or hopefully we've adequately shown this with Rollo, is that he also kind of parrots this kind of position where now we know the reason for the sexual restraints for the people. This is what Dees talks about in the beginning. Now we have all the data available, that kind of jazz. Now we really know how sexual dynamics works. This is kind of the big claim of the manospheres. We have uncovered sexual dynamics, and now that we have this knowledge, now that we have supreme knowledge of all these things, we can modify the biblical and religious teachings, and we can say, okay, this is how you behave sexually from now on. The Bible is now, we understand why the Bible worked, and the Bible was great back in the day, but nowadays we're just that more sophisticated. The times are changing. It's not last Thursday anymore. Now you all go out and spin plays.
Okay, so I'm just reading Stephen Mulroney's thing. Alright, so it says that this will be the final bit, and then I'll explain what the dietary laws actually are. In the Darwinian evolutionary system, you could give up your personal reproductive outcome to make up for it through inclusive fitness. You see, the problem with this is, like, I've studied evolutionary computing to some extent, and so a large part of that is maximizing the fitness of a particular population across time using various selection strategies. Now, if we were to prioritize altruistic thinking, and this increased the fitness score of a particular person in the population, right? If you were continually rooting that out, that wouldn't actually change the score, that would reduce it over time, because you're rooting out the most highly effective genes through natural selection, right? So you're reducing the fitness over time, over generations. I mean, this is, of course, based on a computational implementation of this, right? But I mean, I fail to see how like same-sex attraction being like to look after, to exhibit a altruistic trait that's supposed to increase fitness. You see, it would cease to exist, right? Yet we know it's good, so it can't purely be, or altruism is good in some sense, right? So it can't be that. Back to the laws. The whole point of the laws. There's a first century Christian epistle called the Epistle to Barnabas, and it was considered to be placed as part of the New Testament, but wasn't. And it explains them. They were types. For example, and this is the one that always sticks in my mind: hyena meat. Hyena meat is not allowed to be eaten according to the Levitical food laws. Now, why is this? It turns out it's because you don't eat the food of liars. Because hyenas have double genitals. The females have fake male genitals, and so they are considered to be liars, or they symbolize liars. So in the New Covenant, the not eating of the hyena is represented by like not eating of the food of the liar, so not lying, basically. And it applies that to all kinds of other ones. Like it applies it to the eagles, because like you can't eat eagles under the old law. The blood one is a very obvious one. Like you're not allowed. They weren't allowed to drink blood because this was a pagan ritual, and they were participating in the life of a particular animal. Whereas now we participate in the blood of Christ because Christ is God, and we're participating in the life of God by drinking it, right? Like so. Like, that's why the dietary laws are there, not for the, like, silly, like, evolutionary, I can increase my fitness 1% reasons. Moses isn't an evolutionist.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this, just to kind of add on to that, it's very holistic in the way these people are thinking. So, of course, you mentioned how the types of foods are types, but or the different foods are types of their corresponding, let's say, heavenly counterparts. I usually call them the antitypes. And but also just the entire act of eating, and all of it is, of course, preparing for what we have today. So nowadays, you are able to eat the highest antitype, and you are actually supposed, like, every meal you have is supposed to be a type of the Eucharist. And this is why saints can survive on eating only the Eucharist, because in divinity, typology manifests. So what the type kind of symbolizes is, if you have like a complete connection to God, if you have a complete connection to divinity, then that is also what is reality to you, what becomes reality.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'd have to ask Brett Weinstein to explain Blessed Alexandrina da Acosta. I'd have to ask him to explain Saint Catherine of Siena, who, like, these people live decades on nothing but the Eucharist. We actually have medical papers on Alexandrina da Costa as well, or at least I've heard them talked about, where she survived for 40 days in a hospital on nothing but the Eucharist. Right. I haven't seen the papers myself. I suspect they're out there. Right. I mean, Eucharistic miracles have been documented quite a lot scientifically. The miracles that, in fact, this is actually going to be on a live stream. I'm going to have in about a week, right? The miracles at, what's it called? Lourdes. They have been documented very heavily in the scientific community, and there's a lot of scientific papers saying that, like, yeah, there's legitimately something going on here, right? Like, it makes no sense that. And these are just the confirmed miracles, right? There are like 70 confirmed miracles where people are literally like sitting there praying and they just randomly are able to stand up again. Or they'll get in the water and their cancer will just disappear instantly. Right? Yeah.
So guys, the next time you just eat food, you might want to remember that this is also you kind of preparing yourself for the Eucharist and partaking in something that is derivative from the Eucharist. So I think this also kind of gives perspective into kind of your diet and the kind of things you eat and the kind of things you don't eat. Would you want a Eucharist to be a Dorito chip? That kind of thing, you know? Do you think a Dorito chip is an adequate derivation of the Eucharist, or is there something that is corrupting maybe that relationship? Is a Dorito chip kind of the inadequate body of Christ?
Okay, so what I would say, right? We're at nearly 1 a.m. Do you guys fancy doing the second part of the stream tomorrow?
I could probably arrange it.
Settler?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we're at 2 minutes, 3 seconds, 3 minute, 2 hours, 3 minutes and 33 seconds. We will resume this again tomorrow at the same time, maybe a bit earlier on. Depends how my schedule lays out. My schedule should be fine because I don't have any lectures. So,
Okay.
yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. This was really good. And we will see you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That wasn't bad.